Air quality isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think about chess and esports, but it affects our focus, decision-making, health, sleep, and more. What's in the air you breathe? Find out with Air Things. Breathe better. Live better.
Freedom!
So fresh, so new.
Freedom!
It's all for you.
All for you. Freedom!
Keep your ear to the ground.
Talking about the freedom!
It's the best show in town.
Let's show you that freedom! Freedom!
So this is the broadcast tool here, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see in all its glory. You can see the notation. You can also see the engine evaluation next to each move, and also how long they spend.
What I like is you can make your own moves on the board. You can check the alternatives to what the players did. And even for the moves you make, you get the computer evaluation here.
Fantastic.
I think you get it quicker and better as a premium member, such as yours truly. What I also like, there is a chat function. You can exchange things with people from all over the world. If you want to see something else, let's say you're watching a tournament and you want to see all the games at once, no problem displaying. I have no idea how many games there are, like 128 games at the same time. Can do even more. This is a team competition. You click on multi-board.
That's beautiful.
You can see all the 8 games going on at once.
You can see the games and standings, which I...
What we got? I'll click around. Games and standings here.
Yeah. Analysis, if we click on that tab,
Let's click on it.
You can see that it's a great little graphical illustration. The red line is 0, that is the absolute even mark. And if the white bars go up, the further up they go, the bigger the advantage. And the black bars show a black advantage.
Then there is a database, and here we get the alternatives. And if we click on a move in the database, bam! It gets played on the board.
Fantastic. And then the PGN can even be downloaded.
I like that feature.
Yeah.
Whatever tournament or game you're following, you click it and you open it in the program of your choice.
Yeah, and one of the great things I like to see as well is when we get a video from the playing hall. I like to see them in their seats, nervous, you feel the tension, you feel like you're there, don't you?
Chess is really becoming a spectator's internet sport.
Great that we can see that. And I also love to see the fact that we can get in some of our friends to join us during the broadcast. And it's all interactive, that's what we love. And
a lot of overview functions there.
A lot of great functions there, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you take advantage of all of them. Let's get back to the commentary.
Keep tweeting us, hashtag C24Live. We love to hear from you. Ask us anything, mainly about Lawrence life, but if you have other questions, they're also welcome.
Also send us anything you like about Jan. Hashtag C24Live.
Absolutely.
Have you ever met Miss Lindy? She's a gal with the bright red hair. Now she stands high from all the rest. You know her anywhere. Well, she's mine. Yeah, she's mine. Well, I love that little girl with the bright red hair.
And queen takes f3. Oh, what is going on? Oh, this is going to be a fortress. I just don't see any hopes at all. This is very easy. Just rook back and forth.
Taking chess to the next level.
Wow. Wow.
Wow, yeah. Nothing else to say. Wow.
creating the future of the sport. Introducing the Champions Chess Tour. 10 months, 10 tournaments. The world's best players online and on TV.
Let's not just look at openings move by move, but let's try to understand a little something and look at a few typical structures that can arise out of a bunch of main openings. And hopefully, understanding these structures and the typical plans and the ideas will help you a little bit in your own practice. Laurent, what structures will we cover?
So first of all, we'll cover one very famous structure, Carlsen structure, which can arise from the Queen's Gambit mainly, but from other openings as well, like the London system or the Carlsen.
So, fond childhood memories of the Carlsbad. Thank you. It's important for everyone to understand what's going on here.
Yeah, exactly. Then we'll have a look at some Rui Lopez, actually, which is the classical line, not the Marshall or the Berlin, but this classical position where white plays d4 and sometimes even goes like with the pawn on d5, or even sometimes taking on c5. We'll see some nice game of Bobby Fischer here, and some nice cup of game after d5.
Here you will share your Russian upbringing with us. You have all the classical education in the Rui Lopez. Some nice examples there, hopefully. Then we move on to the French structure, which I don't understand particularly well, but this position has always intrigued me. Who's better and why? What are the plans? Why can white hope for an advantage? Is a space advantage such a big deal? And the French structure can of course arise mainly via the French after moves like knight c3, knight d2 or e5, but we also have a small detour into the Caro-Kann, which is very similar but not quite the same. I've always been intrigued by this
because the bishop can go out here, bishop f5, and it's of course assist trumps for black, but it's not. Life is not that simple, as we will see. And the last topic will be the symmetrical positions, which can arise basically from different move order, like the French exchange French or Petrov, I'm showing right now, or even the Berlin Rookie 1, where we will see an unfinished masterpiece from the current world champion Magnus Carlsen.
Right. Symmetrical positions here, we mean these positions where either side is missing an e-pawn that are very common in today's practice. So this series is not intending to cover every pawn structure imaginable, but we hope we show some that are instructive and relevant, and we hope that you'll enjoy it, maybe even learn something.
Super discounts on merchandise. Massive sales on courses from Chessable. Chessable and Chess24 bundles, with new deals appearing every day. Visit chess24.com/deals.
Let's take someone with a random account, with a random name that just seems attractive.
Play live online against the world's top chess players while they stream their thoughts live. As a Chess24 Premium member, seize the chance to have your moment of fame. Get a peek inside their lives with question and answer sessions, in-depth teaching, analysis and interviews. The Champions Chess Tour, with countless accompanying events, is happening now. Tune in on Chess24.
Chess is an exercise in awareness. It is evolution in motion. I evolved. This is where I am today. I like the feeling of strength that the pawn on d5 gives me. It feels like building a castle, a fortress. Pawn goes to d5. It is supported by its brother on c6. The knight comes to f6 for more stability. The bishop goes out to f5 as a guard outside the gates. Eventually, the pawn on e6 forms a triangle for the safest pawn structure in the center. It gives me confidence for the upcoming battle. This is the Chebanenko Slav.
Nice little username there in Fisher Firuzia. The third best and 136th best player of all time.
Yeah, let's take some other challenge here. Ocean Storm is a Grandmaster. Let's not exaggerate, guys. We just started. Let's not take Grandmaster. Let's take someone with a random account, with a random name that just seems attractive. d4, knight f6.
Yeah, stop playing with my rating, guys. That's becoming a bit embarrassing. I mean, what is this stream if not an opportunity for my mods to roast me? Like, there's really no other reason for me to stream apart from that.
Bishop h3. Rook a2 back. Yeah, I'm not going to accept a draw, of course. We're not in a charity business here.
And a queen check comes. Another queen check. Okay, now you are pre-moving. This is very smart, but I can also pre-move a mate in 2. Okay, thank you for the game, and it wasn't rated. I mean, okay, I'm done. Sorry, guys. I'm not going to banter anymore. This wasn't rated. This was freaking unrated. No, I mean, okay. Most chickenish way to play. I mean, unrated. I'm amazed. I'm just amazed. Okay, if anyone can replace me in this banter, sorry. Okay, let's play against Julia Brazil. It's 3+2, but this will be my revenge, so I'll make this game last forever.
Ay. Such a beast. Yeah, okay, this is pointless. Okay. Good game. What were we saying? There. Okay.
Let's briefly see if Frenchman has challenged me. It's hard to find. Probably should go to his account and see. Ooh, h6, h3. Hello, g5. Didn't see it coming, eh? Mate? Who's funny now, eh, Harigiri? Oh, knight h2, like this. Knight h2. Please don't hit me. Oh, don't hit me. Boom.
You don't accept my challenge.
Ah, okay, I'll accept. I didn't see your challenge.
You're too afraid.
I'm not afraid. I didn't see your challenge. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can you go, please? I'm shy.
I'm
can you
gonna
please
sit next to you.
No, can you
while
please
you're
go?
playing.
No, please. Can you go somewhere else?
Okay, no Frenchman. Next is me.
Yeah. Okay.
And you challenge.
Okay. No Frenchman. Being tossed around here by my wife.
Hello, Miss Tactics. Hello there. So, Pico, we gotta play before my manager is back in the office. Ooh. That's, I think your manager should understand and challenge me as well.
I've also been told many a time, Jan, just fix the shit. Stop asking the audience if they can hear or see you. And also, stop cursing. I believe that type of feedback has been given to me. More than once, probably like thrice.
So fresh, so new.
Freedom!
It's all for you.
All for you. Freedom!
Keep your ear to the ground.
Talking about the freedom!
It's the best show in town.
Let's show it down. Freedom!
Air quality isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think about chess and esports, but it affects our focus, decision-making, health, sleep, and more. What's in the air you breathe? Find out with Air Things. Breathe better. Live better.
Welcome to the quarterfinals of the Magnus Carlsen Invitational. Today is deciding day. We will have our semifinalists at the end of this deciding set that's coming up, and two of our players have to win on demand to force a playoff. Now, we had a very, very exciting day of set one. Lots of decisive, uncompromising play by the players, and let's take a look at how that ended. Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So won their set one in brute force style, finishing it up with just 3 games. Magnus against Levon, it just felt as though Levon failed to find his rhythm throughout set one. He was struggling in every game, including the third game of the set, which Magnus could have pushed for more, but needing just a draw, decided to end it peacefully. Levon Aronian has to win set 2 to force a playoff. Wesley So won in similar style, very convincingly against Ali Reza, though I have to say that especially in that game 3, Ali Reza managed to create a lot of play, a lot of chances, but Wesley, we've seen this quality in him. We've seen this characteristic where when it comes to these difficult positions where he needs to find that precise defense, he's so good at it. And that's exactly what he did. And with a draw in game 3, that set ended as well, 2.5 to half. Ali Reza, in the same situation as Levon, must win to force a playoff. What do these two players need to do differently? I think for Ali Reza, it is going to be about managing the clock well. He needs to, as he mentioned earlier as well, when he failed to qualify in the Skilling Open, he's learned what went wrong. Experience is just so key in these formats. He needs to get that fast. He needs to realize the things that didn't work for him, including the openings that happened, the strategy that needs to be changed. We're going to see what happens. Anish Giri, Maxime Vacher-Legrave, it ended peacefully, but it was full of fireworks. The first 2 games, decisive ones, with each of the players drawing blood turn by turn. Eventually, the last 2 games were drawn. We've seen some incredible theoretical battles between the two. It's been fascinating to watch Maxime employ the Sicilian, classical Sicilian, and not go for the regular Naidov that we see him often, because it is all about the candidates coming up. But the classical suits him perfectly fine. We're going to see if he repeats that or he gets back to his trusted Naidov. But who can forget, Anish has also done a chessable course on Naidov. So always these tricky decisions to take care of. Meanwhile, Jan Nepomniachtchi Hikaru Nakamura match also ended peacefully with both players punching blows in the first two games. That was an absolute thriller, with Jan having, I would say, he dominated the match for the most part, especially in game 3, game 4. He did have big chances, but eventually Hikaru was up to the task, managed to survive a very difficult endgame. As Jan pointed out, it might come down to better technique and better conversion. Let's take a look at the format that's coming up for today. The players are going to be playing 4 rapid games, 15 minutes with a 10-second increment. If Alireza and Levon Aronian win the set, regardless of the margin with which they win in, we go into a playoff, which will witness 2 blitz games, 5 minutes with a 3-second increment. If that's a tie as well, then we have an Armageddon. Meanwhile, on the other set as well, if it ends in a tie, then we go into the playoffs. As always, the higher seed, which in this case would be Magnus, as he finished first, would get to pick the colors. Levon has his task cut up ahead from him. He knows what he needs to do. Big decisions on the board. The other decision that we've been talking about when it comes to Levon is him changing federations. And we asked him what it meant for his chess and what his goals are once he moves to the United States. Take a look.
Welcome to Askill Asking. This move to the US would also perhaps affect your goals in chess. Can you be a little bit more specific in terms of what goals you want to achieve?
No, I only have goals to fulfill my potential as a chess player. I don't have any other aspirations or any other desires to be a part of anything else. I just want to be a chess player. And I believe that being a little bit in the shadow is also good for that.
Before making this decision, did you talk to some of the other American players?
Yes, I spoke about it with Fabiano, and I didn't see any hostility coming from him. I only saw that he would, approve of such move.
I guess the transition will be quite big because you're the leading player in Armenia for many years. You're a superstar in your home country. Now you will go to the US and play alongside super strong players such as Caruana, Nakamura, So, etc. How do you think you will kind of handle that transition from being the clear number 1 to being one of the other guys?
Well, I've played in many teams, in many leagues, and I remember we also had a team where Magnus was on the board and I was on board too, playing for an Armenian team. For me, it really doesn't matter on which board to play, as long as I can play my best, and if I continue playing my best, I'll be on, higher boards sooner or later. So I'm motivated to dedicate my life to chess, and the rest, if I have any fame or if I, feel more welcome in country of United States, that is secondary at the moment, because I believe I'm at the age that I need to achieve something before it's too late.
Thank you. Catch you later.
Some wonderful insights there by Levon. Well, the goal for now is very clear. The players are aiming to make it into the semifinals, but that's not all, because a lot is at stake. Take a look at the prizes. The winner of the Magnus Carlsen Invitational gets a big payday, a big paycheck with $60,000, the runner-up with $40,000, the 4 players who qualify today after the second set, a guaranteed $15,000. Not just that, the winner of this major event gets a guaranteed spot into the grand final of the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour to be held in September. Now, the players are setting up their Opera browser, so they have an incredible experience playing the games that are coming up. The Earthings devices are taking care of their environment, making sure that They've got all the fresh air they need. And we've got with us Peter Leko so that we can be sure that we don't miss out on any of the chess action. So let's get him on. Peter, welcome.
Yeah, hello Tanya, hello everybody. Yeah, it's a wonderful day. I mean, a very exciting day. We're gonna see if Levon Aronian is able to bounce back against Magnus Carlsen or not. That's a very, very special matchup. I mean, yesterday it was somehow kind of too smooth for Magnus. I think this is one of the dangers, you know, when you feel like you have dominated the opponent so nicely and all of a sudden actually nothing happened. In just set one, you are leading the set, but if Levon is able to come back, then we might be witnessing a completely different scenario in the tie breaks. So I think, Levon has to try everything. Magnus should also try to make sure that he seals it without a tie break, because that could be very, very tricky. The same applies for Alireza. I mean, Alireza, after losing the very first game yesterday, he seemed to be better with the white pieces in the second game, which he ended up losing finally. And then also in the second game, in the third game, he created chances for himself with the black pieces. However, it was not enough. Vesely managed to find some incredible defenses. Yes, Alireza could have won that game with some stunning moves, but with few seconds on the clock, it was impossible to find. And the big question is that already Alireza 2 times managed to create chances, but we know how solid, how great Vesely is in this format. And I'm wondering, you know, if now that Vesely already knows that he's leading, he won the first set, maybe he will already now adjust his play according to the scoreboard. So I'm not sure if Alireza will be able to create as many chances as yesterday, but actually he only needs just one chance. If he uses one chance, then everything can be wide open. So I'm expecting, you know, 2 very, very dynamic, interesting matches despite the favorites leading their sets.
Wesley, after having a tough first day in the preliminaries, has completely been unstoppable. We've seen the Wesley that we've been seeing throughout the tour, and he's just a player who's so difficult to create chances again. But the other thing that we've noticed, that the player who does manage to make a comeback in set 2 often has this psychological edge going into playoffs, because it is the day when you win, you're feeling good. Now, we also did ask our audience what they thought about the chances. So let's bring the poll up, because we're going to have liftoff really soon. And this is, of course, my favorite segment that I like to call Peter Hates Predictions and Polls. And here we see that Magnus Carlsen remains a big favorite at 93%, according to our viewers, while it is Hikaru who's at 69%, despite having a set 1 draw. And in the other one, Wesley So with big chances at 80% one more time. And Anish Giri is the one who the viewers believe will be the one who will qualify into the semis. Peter, we're going to have liftoff really, really soon. Quickly, your take on what our viewers think.
Well, I mean, it's basically logical if you take Magnus Carlsen as absolutely a favorite after winning set 1. I agree with that. Levon needs kind of a big miracle. It's also very interesting how the audiences rate like Alireza's chances are 20%, so they believe much more in Alireza bouncing back against Wesley So. And we also have a liftoff in the Jan Nepomniachtchi game against Hikaru Nakamura. Then, you know, I'm really surprised. I mean, we have seen yesterday some incredible match between the 2 players. I mean, one has the feeling that it's at least 50-50. And we're going to see another Berlin no. Jan Nepomniachtchi goes for the Italian. So that's kind of a small surprise. And Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, Anish Giri. So very, very special moment. Anish Giri playing the Najdorf against Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, the big Najdorf expert. Okay, we also know that Anish is, of course, an incredible expert, but still, I mean, Maxim is the one who has probably the most games from the black side in the Najdorf. A very, very interesting situation, because also Maxim has to reveal how he's intending to fight against the Najdorf, and that's also kind of a psychological moment. I also see that we have liftoff in Alireza Firuza Wesley So game, another Italian. It's another Italian. Very interesting. So a lot of Italians. But hang on, everything is going at such a rapid pace in the Jan Nepomniachtchi Hikaru Nakamura game. I mean, Hikaru sticks to his line that he has been playing throughout the tour. And the line where against Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, he seemed to be somewhat always struggling. However, always having a normal good result. I'm wondering that finally, okay, what will really happen? Will we finally get the truth of the position, or will it still be like, we prefer white, but thanks to Hikaru's incredible resilience, he believes that he is holding these positions?
Some very fascinating opening choices there by all the players, actually, with Jan Nepomniachtchi going for the Italian, not allowing the Berlin, understandably so, because I think after what happened yesterday in their match, it was very clear that Hikaru would perhaps be extremely well prepared in the Berlin and ready to take that on with the black pieces. I think what has been very surprising to me in all these openings that we are seeing is Anish Giri employing the Naidov against the biggest Naidov expert currently. But of course, that also comes from the fact that Anish Giri is no less an expert himself. He has an entire chessable course on it. It's like a battle of these two Naidov experts, theoreticians. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they bring on, what are the ideas, what are the plans, because as we've been talking about this, we are perhaps going to be seeing a lot of Naidov in the candidates as well. So is Maxime going to reveal his own preparation, or will he keep that under wraps? And we know that Naidov is the kind of line where if you don't play the best moves, if you don't take it head on first, you can often come in a lot of trouble. So lots at stake there as well, Peter. We see there are some developments, and it's not a very typical crazy Naidov position that we all love to see.
Yes, but it's a strategically very, very complex one. I mean, we see all these incredible finesses, and the players deciding quite quickly on their moves, let's just very quickly go back. So it's the bishop e2 Naidov. This has a reputation of being extremely solid, because the other line for black, a part of playing e5 is e6. That's kind of the Naidov-Scheveningen. It's a completely different system. Usually, the top players prefer to play bishop e2 e5 because the structure immediately clarifies, and there are much less surprises possible in this opening than with e6. Bishop e7, castles, queen d3. This is one of those fancy lines, that also Jan Nepomniachtchi facing his Naidov, he often employed this queen d3, bishop e6, bishop d2 idea. I mean, the bishop d2 is aimed to go knight d5, and already thanks to the bishop on d2, once the knight goes to d5, he would really like to go knight a5 afterwards. Yeah. So for example, if black plays a move like knight b7, white goes knight d5, you give the bishop, takes, and now we already see that white is ready to jump knight a5 and start pushing his pawns with c4, b4 immediately. And then this knight on a5 is very, very unpleasant, because you can never really kick it out, because then it would weaken the c6 square. So black should usually make sure that the white knight does not land on a5. So those are basically the basic strategic ideas here. And what is very, very interesting, how Anish reacted, because he played the prophylactic move rook e8. It's always kind of a useful move. And it also signals that, please, from the white side, make up your mind, because now after knight d5, which happened in the game, he gets a chance to capture the knight with the knight, since after e d5, his bishop is not trapped compared to the line when black puts the knight on d7, then the bishop would be immediately lost. So that's kind of one of the justifications. So he goes back to c8, losing tempo, but at the same time, after white has basically gone for this structure, I mean, the structure is clarified, and now Maxime has to make sure that in the next couple of moves he will prove himself right, because now time is in black's black side. If black gets enough time, black will be perfectly fine. So white wants to go a5, fixing the queen side. Anish says, you know what, I know that I'm weakening the b5 square, but your knight is on b3. I have to make sure that, first of all, you are not fixing my structure. Secondly, you never get a knight a5 move. So that's the justification behind a5. So Max immediately goes with f4, trying to break some other side as well. Knight d7 is played, another small little move, queen e3. I mean, that's a move that has to be kind of preparation, because otherwise putting the queen exactly on the line of the rook, that would be kind of a shocking move. Like this, that we kind of assume that is part of Maxime's preparation. It's much more understandable, but still really surprising to me.
100%. Not just that, take a look at the clock situation. Maxime at 16 minutes, he's definitely the one who's still blitzing out the moves. Very interesting to me to see him play 6th move bishop e2. We've seen this, and we've seen these bishop c4 moves against the Naidov being employed by Levon against Anish as well previously, with some really difficult questions posed to Anish. I won't be surprised if that's something that the players are avoiding as well. Who knows, maybe we'll see it in some other events. But currently, this is the position, and it does look like Anish is the one who went a little slow, calmed down, and started to take a little bit of a thought there. Like I was saying earlier, it's not the craziness, the wild positions that we expect out of the Naidov, but this knight on e5, defending this f7 pawn, it cannot be pushed ever away. I do think with this bishop coming on the long diagonal, the one that you're just marking, bishop f6, Black feels like he's got everything under control. Yes, it's a little strange to go rook e8 and then back with rook f8, but with no direct attack and no direct lines, it does give Black a little time to make such moves as long as everything is under control. White brings the last rook into the game, bringing rook a e1 into the center of the board. I just feel like it feels very natural development moves. Expecting bishop f6. The big question for Black, I feel, is going to be this pawn on a5. The bishop on d2, the knight on b3 are both eyeing this pawn. Yes, currently the queen and the rook defended, but if you move either one of these, it could become a big weakness. A move like b6 to defend this pawn is something that you're always slightly hesitant to make, because that means the c6 square becomes weak for life. Imagine the knight jumping into d4, jumping into c6. So this a5 pawn worries me a tiny bit for Black.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the justification behind White's play. Otherwise, you are just not giving up the e5 square so easily. Yeah? It's the point that he gets the b5 square for his bishop. This is lovely. He also got a big tempo that the rook had to move back to f8. The big question will be also that will Black be able to nicely trade the bishops with bishop d7 or not? Well, it's a little bit slow game at the moment, but it's a very, very complex position. So I'm pretty sure that lot of action ahead of us. But one of the games that is super sharp is the game Levon Aronian, Magnus Carlsen, and this is a Ruy Lopez, but it's not the classical one. I mean, this is the line that Jordan Van Forest also likes to employ from the Black side. He has used it as a surprise weapon in Vaikanze. And Magnus actually is kind of famous of playing it. So basically from the White side, sooner or later, I'm expecting that somebody will really come super prepared and try to refute this. Now, the big question is this person Levon? Is it the right moment to expect Levon to kind of show some really dangerous ideas against this line? It could easily be, because also the match situation kind of is such that Levon needs to take risk in order to try to put Magnus under pressure, and then such crazy position might be exactly the type of position that Levon really needs. So what do we have now? Bishop takes c6. If Black would play the most natural move like d takes c6, then it's obvious that White gonna take knight takes g5, and feeling-wise this looks very, very dangerous, because okay, Black cannot take back on g5, then bishop takes g5 will be a problem. But before we go very deep into this, I would like to mention that after bishop takes c6, also another move that comes to mind is like g takes h4, solving all kinds of pin issues, but the problem with the knight would still remain. So then White would just return with the bishop to a4. Now the knight on f6 is kind of hanging, and this position looks very, very scary for Black, because the kingside pawns are damaged. The knight has to move, and this is certainly not what Magnus wants to do. But why is Magnus taking so much time? Is he thinking that can he maybe even include some d takes c3 move? Or but I'm somehow expecting, I even don't know what to expect. I mean, you have to know your theory here in order to know what you are doing, because everything is dangerous. I mean, d takes c6, knight takes g5. However, you have this d takes c3 move, which might be very, very important, hitting the queen immediately, and also threatening c takes b2, a super sharp position.
And Magnus is doing just that. He realizes how critical and crazy the lines can be here, so he's taking his time. Meanwhile, Levon making his intentions very clear. He knows what needs to be done. He has to go for the kill in this one, otherwise it's the end of the road for him. I did not really like the positions that were arising after taking the bishop on h4. Yes, it can be tempting, but this line that you showed after gh4, bishop a4, it just felt like white has got everything that he wanted. Black's pawn structure on the king side, weaknesses all around. I don't expect Magnus to go for this. If you don't take on h4, you need to take on c6. You definitely want to take with the d pawn to open up that bishop on c8, to have the option of d takes c3, offering a queen trade. Knight takes g5. Let's just take a look at what happens if black actually captures hg5, for example. This is the move that we would be expecting, but the problem is that after you grab the knight, bishop g5 is just such a deadly pin. You end up actually losing a couple of pawns, and look at that king. It just looks absolutely terrible. And instead, because I think in this position, Peter, also interesting, after hg5, bishop g5, for example, let's just back up a little bit, because I just realized that there as well, black could have the move d takes c3. Now, you don't want to take knight c3 here, because suddenly after queen d1, black is out of the pin and gets away with the material. But I wonder if this would give white the opportunity to, in fact, go queen f3 and just say, you know what, you can go c takes b2 and trap my rook there. But take a look at the king position as well. Bishop g4 would be the move that you want to make. There's still queen g3 with, I think it's still a line that continues after queen g3. Bishop f6, this is completely wild.
Yeah, this is kind of the typical,
and you take on g5.
The typical reaction. Yeah, white has to watch out for this. And this is exactly the reason why you were also mentioning this d takes c3 looking innocent, because seems like white can just go all in, but how do we go all in? Yeah, that's kind of the big question, because yeah, this knight f3, bishop g4, and if we would go queen f4, then probably black has some queen d4 moves. I mean, still queen super d4, sharp.
Super duper sharp.
Now you can also take with the queen, and you are threatening bishop h6, but just an illustration that, for example, if black goes rook a d8 and you would rush with bishop h6, you would get into a very, very nasty surprise with queen takes f2 check, because after rook f2, rook d1, it would be checkmate on white's king on g1. So just another illustration how crazy things are. But of course, after rook a d8, white would just take knight takes c3 and everything is fine. So, but the point is that Magnus's choice to take d takes c3 immediately is so much more logical, because let's just forget about taking. After d takes c3, it's clear that you're not going to keep the queens, and basically you are forcing white to take on d8, takes, knight takes c3 is played. This is now the current position, and if you take, for example, hg5, then bishop g5 is still the same issue, like you are getting into this pin, not the queen, but the rook is pinned, and white might end up be pawn up. But I believe that the main question is that can black move, for example, the knight to d5, then white would, for example, hit on f7, and all kinds of craziness would appear here as well.
This is absolutely insane. And knight f7 also hits the rook on d8 with the bishop, and after rook e8, black could probably just also continue. The line just keeps going on. You've got knight h6 check, the king moves to g7 or h7, attacking the knight, not really sure where that piece is going. The e5 pawn is hanging, bishop g5 is met by rook e5. Absolute madness on the board, but that's exactly what Lev needs. And the fact that Magnus is the one who slowed down and is thinking, it does feel like he's gotten what he wanted out of the opening. Magnus needs to be precise. Knight d5 on the board. Is Lev going to make the move knight f7? Is there anything else that we can find? Even a move like knight to e4 comes to mind. Knight g4, currently hg5 is black's idea. But knight e4, there's maybe knight to e4, because the only thing after that is that if you go rook e8, let's just point that out. Of course, it's not something that needs to be played, but you don't want to make a move like rook e8 anymore, hitting the e5 pawn. After knight d5, there's knight f6 check coming in, and that's disaster. So big question to Lev, what he wants to do with the knight on g5. Does he want to capture on f7 or fall back?
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, you know, it's very funny. I mean, it's a forcing line. And I do remember that at one point, but it was like 5-6 years ago, I mean, the very early years when Magnus started playing this position, I really looked very seriously this whole line, and I checked basically all kinds of possibilities. And I do recall that I had this because when Sotiris mentioned that after knight f7, rook e8, the insane computer also says that knight d8 is a move, then suddenly I remembered, that exactly this knight d8 was there, but actually it was leading to 0-0. So, I mean, it was not advantage, but I mean, those are the things that Magnus plays all kinds of openings, and when he comes up with this bishop c5, bishop a7 sideline, it's the moment when you are not expecting it. So it would be very nice from the white side when you know that Magnus tells you, Peter, Levon, in the afternoon, if you're gonna face me, I'm gonna go bishop c5, bishop a7, prepare. What you want, you can prepare. But he's not telling this. I mean, who knew, how could Levon knew that after winning the first set, Magnus would go into this adventure. And I'm pretty sure that at some point, Levon's preparation had to end, like basically he was thinking that, okay, if this appears, this is the direction I'm gonna take it from there.
And that's the thing with these forcing lines. If your opponent knows it, it's all fine and the 0.0 evaluation appears and black's out of trouble. But the thing is that if there is any catch there, and if, let's say, Magnus has a slight slip as well, Levon will get exactly what he wants. Very often that ends up in big advantage for white. So a nice way to just say, I'm going to test out this preparation that you have. Peter, I lost you a little bit in the middle. Were you mentioning that knight d8 is something that you've seen before?
Yes, I definitely analyzed it, but it was like some 7-8 years ago. I told you, like in 2013, 14, when this line appeared, I took a look at all the possibilities. I also believe that if you play the move knight g4, then probably black plays the move knight takes c3, because the rook on d8 is not yet hanging because the knight on e4 is hanging. You have to kind of take this knight back. Probably b takes c3 is the most natural move, and then already black has some squares on the d file, so he can put rook to d3. And we see some very sharp Berlin structures, that black has the two bishops. Black wants to get very active with bishop f5, so okay, very logical would be to follow it up with rook a d1, rook takes d1, rook takes d1, and then black would still be able to develop with the tempo like bishop f5, or also bishop e6 without the tempo. And with the damaged queenside structure, I mean, yes, we do see some real weaknesses in black's position, but black is also very active with the two bishops, so it's not clear at all what's this position.
Wow, what an amazing endgame we are setting us up for. Even after bishop f5, there are moves like knight f6, g4. The drama would just continue. But of course, first question to Lev is what he has in mind in this position. And I think this is one of those moments that will define the course of the game. And we will see what Lev decides, Peter. Meanwhile, we've got action everywhere. We haven't looked at the Alireza position, so let's just take a check on how that's going for the 17-year-old who needs to win this set.
Yeah, it's actually, so funny. Whenever you mention this 17 years old, it strikes me that yes, it's true, but looking at Alireza's play and everything, I mean, I just don't get the impression, that Alireza is just 17. I mean, it seems to me like he's just so strong in so many aspects of the game. Yeah, we have talked about this, that when he just started shooting into the scene, then we knew that he's an incredibly dangerous, aggressive, attacking player, very tricky and so on. But in the last 1.5 years, he became so much more universal, and he just became an absolute super top player. Yeah. And whenever I think about a super top player, I never really care about his age. I'm just feeling like, okay, this guy is super strong. And whenever I look at Alireza's games, that's the feeling I'm getting. I mean, this is not a 70-year-old, this is just a super grandmaster. I mean, getting to the very top. And again, we see some very fine strategical play by both of these guys. I mean, how could you say that who is younger here? I don't have a feeling that based on the moves, one could really give a feeling that, I mean, who is the younger player. So we did see that it was an Italian, and some little bit spicy line, because Alireza played the move queen b3. It's a very tricky move. I mean, there was a moment like 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, when this queen b3 move became popular. I think Nakamura played it against Grishchuk maybe in one of these FIDE Grand Prix. I mean, I do remember that it did happen. And interesting to see how Wesley reacts. So bishop e6, a5. Making sure that, once you play the move queen b3, you have to watch out, because black is now starting to play knight e5. So it's like a very, very direct idea that with your last move, queen b3, you threaten bishop takes f7. But actually now, thanks to this pawn on a6, this is a very typical motive that black can play bishop e6, and the pawn on b7 is not hanging due to the knight a5 move, and all of a sudden the queen on b7 is trapped. There is just no way to go, nowhere to go. So this is the trick. So after bishop e6, a5, rook b8 is played, knight f1, and this is a very strategic battle, and black pushes d6, d5. This is a very straightforward way of dealing with white's center, but it's not the end of the day. Takes, knight g3. Still, now the pawn on e5 is kind of vulnerable. The knight on c6 is somewhat misplaced. I mean, put this knight on g6 instead of c6 and black will solve all kinds of problems. But with knight stuck on c6, this is always a very tricky position. So it's absolutely logical that Wesley believes that, just takes, queen d5, I had to neutralize the pressure. Knight e5, using the fact that the queen on d5 is now unstable, and after queen takes c4, white gets knight takes f6. So this whole d5 operation had to be very, very carefully checked by Alireza, because after g takes f6, d takes c4, we get double pawns here for white and double pawns here for black. Very, very difficult to evaluate because everything depends on also tempo. Yeah, black goes king h7. We're gonna see the next moves. b4 is natural, bishop f8 natural as well. White develops bishop e3, black goes rook bd8, rook a d1, f5 is played. It's very important for black to push f6, f5 before white gets the chance of blockading this pawn with knight h4. So everything is kind of very logical. f5, g3, bishop g7, rook d5, and that's kind of almost the current position. Now Wesley has played the move e4, hitting the pawn on c3. That's kind of the real question for white's play. That rook d5 was very natural, but after e4, how does he plan to take care of his c3 pawn? And Alireza goes for knight h4. That's the current position.
That's actually a very concrete line and a very precise variation, because after knight h4, black can still pick up the c3 pawn. It hits the rook on e1 as well as the pawn on b4. And I completely understand the point that when you watch a player like Alireza in action, with how cunning and tricky he is, but not just in dynamic position, his way of handling endgames, his technique, how good he is. We remember that game he had against David Anton previously, just his strategic masterpiece that he shows. All aspects of the game, it is super easy to forget that he is just 17 years old, because how does somebody at 17 get so good at chess? And I think that's just, of course, there's a lot of hard work, but also the raw talent that Alireza Firouzja is, something that Magnus Carlsen himself has also spoken about. Meanwhile, we will take a look at whether c3 pawn is captured or not. But yes, lots of drama on the Yan Hikaru board, exactly the kind of position we expect from the two of them. Peter, my first feeling is that Black King does look like he's under a lot of danger. Black doesn't feel like he has all the coordination he needs right now. Not just that, White has got an extra pawn as well.
Yeah, and not just that. I mean, that's already kind of good enough news for White, but look at the clock situation. I mean, Hikaru is down to 1.5 minutes. I mean, something really had to happen. I mean, it's probably based on some very deep new preparation by Jan Nepomniachtchi. I mean, knowing that Hikaru plays this line, he came probably very, very well armed. I mean, let's just very quickly go through this because we have missed out on the action. So knight f5 was played. It's kind of a little bit strange. Takes, rook takes e4. So Jan is going for this adventure with the rook. But he first of all grabbed the pawn. And not just the pawn, but the structure is very, very dangerous. I mean, Black has vulnerable pieces. Best structure with pawn on d4. The bishop on b6 is doing nothing. White has a lovely bishop on d3. Beautiful construction. So looking very promising, but it's a move per move position. So in somewhere, probably Hikaru believed that it should be fine for Black. But this rook, I mean, this rook maneuver was just incredible, because now if you play bishop g4, then White goes queen e4, yeah, and threatens checkmate on h7. So that was the reason why it was impossible to play like this. So Black played the move g6, giving up the pawn, king g7, h4, bishop f5, h5, and rook c8 played, trying to hit the bishop on c1, which protects the rook on h6. That's kind of the threat. So Jan makes sure that he develops the bishop to d2. His pawn up, he's breaking through on the king side. I mean, if he will get a chance to take h take g6 and black is not in time to do something very big, then it's just a winning position for white, I believe. It's pawn up and really bad news. So what is Hikaru gonna do now?
Big questions for Hikaru. He looks completely like this is quite a devastating position for the black pieces. I'm looking at it, and what I love about it is that if you just put this position on the board, the question, how did white's rook get to h6? I mean, with the pawn on h5, you don't get to see this everywhere. It seems like a dream spot for the rook. Of course, white also has to be careful about not getting it trapped there. Bishop d2 played. Now, I would love to try and trade queens as black. Yes, I was thinking about taking on d3 and trying to get in the move queen f5. He goes for it, but it also makes me feel that perhaps white can just trade queens. He's got an extra pawn. I don't know about the move queen d4. Of course, it's also very tempting, but takes and rook d6. You've got this stunning h pawn, which is on h5. The d4 pawn is weak, a huge threat. Bishop h6 on the board. Even if white doesn't go into complications, the current position that you see with taking the pawn on d4, just simplifying it, going into this endgame seems like a very professional choice as well.
Yeah, probably white's only problem is that he has so many different, very promising moves. But one thing after queen f5, that if I take on d4, I feel like I'm giving a very, very important move for black. And I don't know exactly if something like bishop g5 is an issue, because then all of a sudden white's rook on h6 can be kind of trapped, but it's met by e6. So it's also just to illustrate it, it would mean like the rook is almost lost, but white has all kinds of e6 ideas. But e6 is met by bishop f6, and then it's way too much of a mess. So yeah, Jan goes for this. I mean, that's kind of the natural choice. I mean, you are already pawn up, and you can damage your opponent pawn structure. So rook d6, rook e8, blitzed out by Jan. I mean, by Hikaru, it's probably the only move. Stepping out of bishop a6 check and also hitting at least the e5 pawn, but it's looking very bad for black.
It did feel like the right way to go, no? Simply you're a pawn up, you trade off the queens, your pieces are active, black's the one with all the weaknesses. Rook e8 played on the board. He could potentially also pick up the pawn on d4, put this bishop on c3. Lots of very, very pleasant options here for Jan, and not to mention the advantage on the clock, almost 10 minutes up. Meanwhile, Firouzja continues his, I have to say, very impressive play in the endgame. He has managed to create a position with a lot of pressure. Let's just get an update on that, Peter. I do see our evaluation bar seems to think that black should be fine here, but I think with this pawn advance on the queen side, the storm that we are seeing, the whole idea, the threat is to try and create a weakness on black's queen side. This knight on f5, I'm loving it. Black's h5 weakness. Yes, Wesley asking a clear question after knight b4. You need to probably trade off that rook, but that would give the d file and some play to black. I didn't see another option but to go for rook d8. Knight coming into d3, but how is white responding to this now? Because black has a direct idea of knight d3.
Yeah, exactly. Knight d3, king g6. I mean, it's ultra cool play by Wesley as well. I mean, it looked like, you know, Alireza is forcing him to play fantastically, because just one little mistake and black's position might be really critical. However, it seems to me like Wesley has passed the test, because this knight h4, bishop takes c3, rook c1. He's not going after the b4 pawn with the bishop. No, he doesn't want to get distracted. He wants coordination. Bishop f6, knight takes f5, h5. Again, h5, you know, he's not taking on b4. He's not in any rush, because probably knight takes b4 would actually run into takes, rook b1, and all of a sudden white opens the b file and will get back the pawn anyway. Pawn on h6 is hanging as well. So Wesley plays the move h5, waiting for white to play b5, and then he jumps with the knight to b4 because the b file is closed. So the big difference is that white cannot make use like before with this rook b1, opening up the b file, and now there was nothing better than to take stakes and to play h3 to make sure that you will be able to protect your knight with g4 once black challenges it with king g6. So after h3, knight d3 is on the board, and I would feel like, you know, black has solved all his problems. It's a very sharp position. Maybe even white is the one who has to be careful, but probably has enough activity. But for example, g4 runs into some h takes g4, a takes g4, knight e5, and two pawns are kind of hanging. So very tricky spot. Alireza goes b takes a6, b takes a6, and I'm expecting g4 to happen anyway.
B takes a6 had to be played. Let's just quickly point out that the knight on f5 was hanging but couldn't be taken after. You just don't want to allow your opponent's pawn on b7. He just goes, and rook b8 can, besides other things, a6, a7 or bishop a7, both lines are very strong. He decides to go for what you mentioned, Peter. g4 had to be played. No good square for the white knight. He plays g4, and immediately taking advantage of the weakness created on g4, black jumps the d3 knight. That's quite a nice knight maneuver that we saw from Wesley. Knight b4, knight d3, knight e5, transferring it all the way to the king side, attacking the g4 pawn, as well as threats of knight f3 check. The c4 pawn is weak. And white makes use of the fact that black has one weakness as well, which is the e4 pawn. Goes knight g3, attacking it. Might fizzle out with some pawn trades here.
Yeah, exactly. I think this was the key point of this h3 g4 operation, that white has this knight g3, which had to be foreseen actually. I mean, if Arida went for all these adventures, I think that he had like this backup in his mind that if black plays best, and it looks like, you know, black is perfectly fine, then white will still have this knight g3 move. Thanks to this, white should be fine, and it should be kind of drawish. But one of the games that comes to my mind is, you know, the Magnus game against Levon, because we have seen a very, very stunning reaction by Magnus. And look at this, the position is very dangerous, isn't Levon in big trouble? Yeah, he finds f7 and then rook d7 check. Yeah, that was the only way of playing. But how did we reach here? Yeah, that would be the very first question. And the very first question, that everything went along the lines that how we spoke, and then takes bishop e6, not bishop f5, bishop e6, hitting the pawn on a2, and after a3 comes the point, which is, I believe, still part of Magnus's preparation. He did spend a lot of time getting here, but the move f5, the stunning move f5, is the one that puts everything, you know, under control, that you sacrifice this pawn, but it's very, very important to make sure that white will not be able to start advancing his pawns like in the Berlin. And after he takes f6, en passant, all of a sudden, black has the very active pieces. He has solved all these problems of knight f6 check. The pawn on f6 is actually hindering both whites, knight on e4 and the bishop on h4. So basically with this pawn sacrifice, black killed both of white's minor pieces. At the same time, he got the open e-file for his rook, and his bishop is now also threatening to jump all over the place. So Levon played h3, bishop b3, hitting the rook and hitting the knight. So there was no other move for white than to give f7 check, giving back the material. Takes, rook d7 check, king g6, and now Levon has to find the move. Still the knight is hanging on e4, and it's not really obvious where to put this knight.
All right, so Magnus Carlsen looks like he's the one putting all the pressure here. Now, I see that we've got endgames, fascinating endgames everywhere except one game where the queens are still on the board. It is the knight off. Peter, let's also get a quick update on the Anish Maxime position. Let's bring that.
Yeah, just a second, Tanya. It's a little bit dramatic because Levon has only 20 seconds. You know, Levon has 20 seconds in this position. It might be very, very critical for the next two moves because, yeah, he goes knight d2. It's kind of a panic move. I mean, you would like to play for some attack, but now black has rook d1. Yeah, pinning this knight. Is this what we're gonna be seeing? Rook d1. Can black just pin the knight?
There is knight f3, knight e5, but that knight and king h5 is there, so that doesn't work. Let's just quickly show that tactic, maybe just even with that if white wants to unpin it with the idea of knight f3, it falls apart because after knight e5 there's
yeah, but you can also play king f5. I mean, this is just completely winning because the knight on d7 is trapped, and the two bishops and everything is kind of, because the move king h5 might run into g4 checkmate.
Oh, knight f3, that's amazing.
Yeah, this is how quickly
this is super beautiful.
Yeah, chess is cruel. Yeah, I mean, okay, you want to punish your opponent for for making some dubious moves, and then you run yourself into some trouble.
Incredible.
But yeah, Magnus goes bishop e6, hitting the rook. Now white cannot capture on c7 because bishop b8 would have pinned the rook and win the game. So rook d8 was kind of the only square available. But
also,
now,
the problem with a move like rook e7 is that allows bishop c5 with the tempo, again transferring the rook to d6. So it doesn't really, the bishop to d6 next, coming with a check, a3 pawn attack. So Magnus had to go, Levon had to fall back with the rook to d8. And I think still black can look at improving his bishop. Can maybe go bishop c5 anyway?
Yeah, bishop c5 is very tempting, but okay, at least white will have a tempo with knight f3. It's at least something, but Levon down to 22 seconds. It's a very, very scary position. I mean, how do you, I mean, so many tactics, so many things to calculate. But okay, white also has some two pass pawns here on the king side. So if white manages to stabilize the situation, then anything can happen. But I also understand your point. I'm looking at the Anish game. It's completely crazy. And it does seem like Anish is maybe better with the black pieces. I mean, he had this wonderful idea of hitting back the bishop on e7. So it was just a temporary piece sacrifice. And this lovely bishop on h3, creating all kinds of threats to white king on h1. Very scary position for white.
All right, Peter, maybe we should just go to with Levon having just a few seconds, because this one is going to go on for a while. The players still have time. And we see after rook d8, Magnus still having a think. Of course, rook d1 is still very tempting because, like you mentioned, if the knight moves, going into this two bishop endgame will cause a lot of trouble for white, having the double bishop with black. And rook d1 just feels like it kind of cramps white's position even further. So rook d1 or bishop c5 are the two options that come to mind?
Yes, but somehow, you know, my feeling was that if I go for this rook d1, I would slightly have preferred to do it without bishop e6.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly why, but maybe it doesn't really matter. Magnus goes rook e2.
Peter, big news coming in. Jan Nepomniachtchi has won his first game against Hikaru, and I have to say that was a brilliantly played game by Jan. Maybe we'll go back to it once these games are over. That rook on h6, just that entire rook maneuver, and it just felt like he outplayed Hikaru in that one.
Yeah, he showed some wonderful preparation, and okay, Jan is such type of player, you know, if he gets his initiative, I mean, he is just very, very strong. I mean, he has perfect time management in this regard, yeah, that if he gets a good position, he will never miss it because of little time on the clock. So yeah, this was a total disaster for Hikaru and a wonderful start for Jan. It reminds me a little bit of their yesterday's game when it was Hikaru who won the first game way too easily. Now let's see if Hikaru will be able to bounce back as Jan did yesterday, but definitely at the moment it's Jan who is having the advantage.
Yeah, he continues the momentum he built in set one after losing that first game and winning the second game right back in two very, very important game 3 and game 4 where he was better. He continues that setup with his first win today. Now, this position, Peter, it does look like bad news for Levon. I mean, black has got an extra pawn plus all the compensation. Rook g2 can't be taken right now because there's knight h4 forking the king and the rook. But if you don't fall for that, just I mean, I don't know what is the move here. Maybe rook a2, maybe rook f2, but black's the one who looks like he's completely dominating the board with that bishop on d5.
Yeah, and this might be actually almost decisive for the whole match. I mean, if Magnus, after winning yesterday so comfortably and then even able to win the very first game with the black pieces, I mean, I'm not really seeing a way back for Levon there. I mean, he has to make somehow sure that he saves this position. I mean, it looks bad, but after all, there are some chances because these pawns are not running yet. Yeah, I mean, black pawns, like in the Berlin often, that they are a little bit slow. They don't move so quickly, while white's pawns, you know, like g4, h4 can be played very quickly. Now, the big question is what's happening after rook f2, this pawn endgame. Usually pawn endgame with pawn up should be a completely easy win, but it's a little bit trickier because these are double pawns. Magnus going for rook f2 anyway, believing that, okay, there is no way this endgame is not winning. And I kind of, yeah, Levon goes h4. So let's see how Magnus does it.
I think he's going to go for it.
First of all, there is no reason yet to take on f3. I mean, this possibility is not running away. So b5 is played first. White will have to play something like king g3 in order to get out of this pin, because he cannot play g5, because then the pawn endgame will be immediately lost. So what is, but I mean, this looks lost, no? I mean, king g3 takes, then black puts the king to e5, and then with c5, a5, he will always have the b4 break, and we still have this pawn. Yeah, Magnus goes for takes.
Looks completely lost, no? After this c5, a5 coming in, he goes directly for it. After c5, king e4, he probably also has a move c6, so there's nothing to worry about.
Exactly.
But after king e4, there's c6, but also played immediately. You don't even want to calculate a5, b4 lines. And with a5 coming in, looks like bad news for Levon.
Yeah, it just completely lost, because black plays the move a5 and is always ready to have a pass pawn with b4. And if white has to move with his king there, then the c6 pawn will protect the b pawn later with c5 and then collect the pawn. So basically it's resigns. King f4 is played. Now black plays the move a5, and that's it. It's over.
All right, let's just, because we can say that this one Magnus is going to win, Peter, let's go to the Maxime game. This is going to finish anytime now. I don't think Levon has any chance here. Now I see this position and it is even material, but I like that black has this pawn on a4. Don't know if it's going to be enough or not, but one gets the feeling with the rook behind the pawn, white constantly having to be stuck to make sure that black isn't able to advance. If anyone has chances, it's got to be black here.
Yes, but probably white has enough. I mean, it does look slightly unpleasant. On the other hand, you also have some ideas like going h4, h5 and trying to create some pressure against black's king, because after all, black's king on g8 is also at the moment still safe, but something happens. I mean, if white gets close to it, then it will be very, very vulnerable. White also has some c4, c5 breaks. So usually, yeah, the position looks very, very dangerous, but I mean, yeah, and Anish goes queen b6. I don't know exactly if this is some kind of a draw offer, because white goes look at, yeah, and we're gonna see a repetition of moves.
And Magnus Carlsen has also won his game. Levon Aronian resigned, and with that, Levon in big trouble. Already down one set, and he starts set 2 with a loss. So he definitely needs to win the next game. Not just that, he needs to win another game to take it into playoff. And of course, Ali Reza. Peter, let's take a look at this one. I have to say, white looks like in a lot of but knight d3 should be fine now. This should be okay for white.
Yeah, okay. King d1 has to be played, or king b1. I mean, king b1, rook b2, king a1 is also possible. But king d1 looks, looks very scary. But because the knight and the rook was hanging, black was not able to play for checkmate. So knight f2 check. Now white moves the. I mean, it looks like this game is about to end in a draw, I believe.
And the point is that once white moves the king, taking on a5 doesn't help. There's knight b3 that picks up the rook, so that's not a problem at all. And it might be a repetition on the spot. Knight d3 played again. It's a very interesting position because everything's hanging. Black's rook is hanging, white's rook is hanging, the knights are hanging. Now knight b3 check, king c4, knight a5, and this should finish any moment.
Yeah, I mean, okay, white just goes knight c6 check.
b7?
Sorry?
Knight b7, knight d3.
Knight b7, yeah, knight b7, f5. Okay, just saying enough is enough. Yeah, it's a draw. Wow, I mean, a very, very hard fought game. Very, very hard fought game. Look at this, and they are fighting who sacrificed the knight. Yeah, it's very, very
First,
fun.
black sacrificed the f pawn playing f5, and now white sacrifices the knight returning the favor, but of course, 2 less material. And that finished. And with that, Peter, we're done with our game 1. Let's get a quick result recap. Magnus Carlsen starts with a bang, wins his first game against Levon. Levon's task seems to be getting more and more impossible with every game. And Wesley saw Ali Reza, such a brilliant fight by Ali Reza. He drew the first game, but I think Wesley can be happy with that result. He leads their set, and he started with the black pieces today. He's going to go into the next game. He's going to have white. So Wesley's still quite pleased with the way things went at the start. Anish Giri, Maxime Vachier, Legrave, also a very, very interesting fight there, Peter. We saw a night off where Anish managed to survive a little bit of an unpleasant position out of the opening and eventually managed to create an A passer, but it wasn't enough, and that ended in a draw. Hikaru, Jan Nepomniachtchi, Hikaru finds himself also in trouble. He needs to level the score, and that was our round one. Peter, your recap of everything that we just witnessed.
Yeah, well, I mean, the game Alireza Firuza Wesley saw was a very, very hard-fought game with a lot of finesses, very, very high-level play. But this is exactly what I have been talking about. Yesterday Alireza managed to create chances against Wesley So, but it doesn't mean, that despite how good and how creative he's playing, Wesley is so good that it's not obvious that he can always get such good chances as yesterday to bounce back. But also Alireza signaled in the first game that he's trying to disbalance things. He's looking for very uncompromising fight to try to hit Wesley, but for the moment Wesley very comfortably defended with the black pieces. There was some really very nice high-level maneuvering there, but nothing decided yet. One of the games that was very shocking was the game between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Hikaru Nakamura. The reason why I'm saying shocking is that, it was too easy. We have seen that somehow the opening really backfired for Hikaru. He went into this line. I don't know exactly what he was hoping from it because it looks very suspicious. Maybe he has mixed up something because White has saved this tempo on H3. So I believe that he must have mixed up something. He relied on the usual moves, but there was a certain difference. And all of a sudden, after knight h4, he just gets into some terrible attack. And also clock situation, we could see that Hikaru was very, very displeased with what's happening. He was burning time and he didn't find anything better than to go into this very, very bad position. It already indicates that he was not happy with his position. He was fighting for survival. And there was a moment, this was the position we did see, and it looked like, White has the better position, is pawn up, and Black will not survive. And this is actually also what happened in the game. Jan, true to his style, went for the maximum. He didn't want to play technical positions. He was going for the absolute maximum, and look at this, he created some mating idea, sacrificing another pawn. So from pawn up, he's now suddenly pawn down, but winning the position after rook g7 check. So a wonderful win for Nepo, but somehow it came too easily. It's not what you are expecting against Hikaru. So I'm pretty sure that Hikaru is now very, very angry, and he is really looking forward to try to bounce back in the next game because this is not his standard.
Well, the good news is that he is going to have White in the next game. I have to say, Jan has been very impressive the past couple of days. He had a tough day 1, day 2 in the preliminaries. On day 3, he scored 4 out of 5. He started the final day of the qualifiers on 10th spot. In fact, he was the only player who managed to edge himself out of that deep, dark hole of being in the bottom half and find himself in the top 8 to qualify. Then he started set 1 with a loss against Hikaru, but ever since then, he's found his rhythm, he's found his momentum, he struck back immediately, played 2 great games after that, keeping his chances alive, was better in both of them, and then starts this day with a bang. It's been an incredible tournament so far. And speaking of the preliminaries, Peter, we started with 16 participants. We are down to 8, and after today, there'll only be 4 left. I think what's really been amazing to watch in this event have been all the new faces as well that we had. These were our standings after we finished the first 3 days of the quarterfinals, of the preliminaries. Just look at those who didn't make it, those who it was the end of the road for them after day 3 of the event. Sergei Karyakin, Daniel Dubov, Rajabov, Mamedyarov, just all these players, big names in the chess world. It just goes on to show what an incredibly tough event this is. It comprised of 8 players who were tour leaders, 4 wildcard entries, 2 premium vote returns, as well as 2 winners of the qualifiers. The qualifiers were held on Chess24, and we had Niels Grandelius and Alan Pishaw who made their debut into the Champions Chess Tour, qualifying from this event. Alan Pishaw won the event, and yes, you see him at the bottom of the board, but he showed exactly what he's capable of. All the exciting chess fearless, uncompromising play by the South American. Brilliant performance. And I think what really touched me was what Alan wrote on his Facebook after the event was over, and we have it on our screen. And he said he's finished the tournament and it was an incredible experience, unaccustomed to receive invitations of this level. He would have liked to score more points, but the truth is that he's not upset because it is the first time that he's playing against these big names, against these big players. And I think what was amazing to watch was just how he never tried to play it safe. He always tried to get these positions which suit his style, regardless of who he was playing against. And he mentions that now the great challenge starts, and that's to see if from here in the next 15, 20 years, he can get to the level that these players have. He has no idea if he'll manage or not, but I'm going to do everything in my power to try and be one of the best one day. And I think that's just so motivational and inspirational to read, because you see that when there are so many of these top players, strong grandmasters across the world, young grandmasters, and when they're given this opportunity to compete with the best in the world, the kind of inspiration and motivation that brings them regardless of the result. And we love to watch it when these players, when they're playing these big names, they don't care about it. They still play fearless chess. They still play dynamic chess. And I think Alan and Niels, who qualified from our Chess 24 qualifiers, did exactly that.
Well, I see, you remember there was this moment when Alan had the chance to beat Daniel Dubov. He was very, very close, and it was like middle of the tournament. And I told you that, he really needs to win this, because if he wins this, then he might start believing, that all these crazy positions that he's fighting against the guys, he's able to win. Yeah, if you get this feeling, it can turn. But he was not able to win this very first game, and after that, he finally, I think, psychologically broke at the very end, because he lost more or less all of his last games. It's connected, to this feeling, when you get it that you can, then you get the extra energy. But if you always fail, then you feel like, okay, somehow whatever chances I'm having, I'm not using them. These guys are too strong, and then it's very difficult to score points. So I'm pretty sure that if he ever gets another chance, he will already have this feeling. He will also prepare much better, because he knows what to expect. Because that's kind of the trickiest part, that you hear all the time that these guys are fantastic, but what it means to play against them. And it's also very tricky, because often when you are looking from home, you are also following the games with an engine, and you see that the players are making mistakes, yes, but usually they are making these mistakes against each other when they are forced, the tension is so high and so on. But otherwise, the games of these super players are on such a very high level that if you did not experience yourself, then you even cannot imagine. Nightingale made this experience, and he will be much more wise, and he also gets a lot of inspiration to work even harder. So I'm really curious to see how he will develop in the future.
And I think the way he sums it up, if any of us are looking for any inspiration and motivation to work on, it's right here where he says, I've had an unforgettable week that's left me with a lot of material to keep improving. Never in my life have I been so happy to finish last, because to win big, you have to pay the price of losing many games. That's incredible. We can't wait to see these debutants keep coming back, because I think it is always fun to have these fresh faces in the mix, playing these top guys. The talent is immense, the strong level that they bring in, it's always exciting to watch. And speaking about uncompromising attacking chess, if that's the kind of chess that you enjoy playing, definitely check out the masterclass that CoChess has for you on the 20th and 21st of March with none other than Alexei Shirov. Now, when it's about Shirov, there's going to be fire on board, and that's what it's going to be about. So definitely keep your calendars free for that. Let's bring our brackets up and see what the players need to do for now. And this is where we stand with the current with the current scorecard. Magnus Carlsen did win set 1 and he starts his set 2 with a win. Wesley So also won his set 1 and he starts the day with a draw. Alireza Firouzja drew his game with Wesley. Maxime Vacher-Lagrave, Anish Giri ended in a draw, and Jan Nepomniachtchi takes his lead against Hikaru Nakamura. Peter, let's go match by match and let's see what it is that you feel the players perhaps need to do differently. I think the biggest task is for Levon to try and find his chances from this moment on against a player like Magnus. It's almost asking for a miracle. What is that miracle according to you?
Yes, that's kind of very, very difficult to say. I mean, I did feel that, it might look like and maybe it was an accident, but I'm not entirely sure because I know that Levon is kind of a big psychologist. And if all the parties, I mean, all the audience and everyone involved in this chess tour had been following the preliminaries, we could see that whenever Levon plays with the white pieces, he immediately makes his very first move. And he was always the first to start his game. But today against Magnus Carlsen, we have seen that all the other 3 boards have started their game and Levon has not yet made his first move. So I felt like, there was some kind of a psychology play by Levon. I mean, trying to mind game Magnus, but it definitely did not work. I mean,
Peter, we are being told on that. Yes, we want to read a lot into it, but it was nothing like that. Magnus just arrived late.
Okay, Magnus arrived late, but still, Levon could have made his first move, no? I mean, okay, probably Levon is taking care of the camera, so he looked that Magnus is not there, and okay, then it's basically it makes really no sense to play e4. All right, so my conspiracy theory does not work, but still, for me, at least for a moment, I was thinking that I was keeping an eye on when will Levon play his e4 move, and he didn't do it. But yeah, it was maybe connected to Magnus not being there, but now with the black pieces after losing the very first game, I believe that first of all, Levon has to make sure that he holds with the black pieces because there is just no reason for him to go crazy with the black pieces because it might mean that he loses another game and the match will be over almost immediately. I know it's immediately it's over. Yeah, if Magnus wins, if he reaches 2 points, then that's it. There is no way back. So Levon has to make sure that he draws now and then wins with the white pieces, and then he can try to go all in the very last game if he gets the chance. But I think for the moment, it should be like waiting for his chance instead of going crazy because that would play into Magnus's hands.
And I think that's what happened in their round 1. This opening choice that he had was, of course, a wild one. He wanted to take his chances there, but it is about... I think it was Anish who mentioned that when you're playing for a win, it's not about creating something crazy on the board, but just making sure that there is no direct draw or a direct equality. And maybe that's the way that you're waiting for your chances to happen, because very often when you create your chances, that can backfire.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, okay, just play your normal chess because, okay, also Magnus is in kind of a tricky spot. If he wins this game, then he can put an end to the match. But basically, waiting for him to create some, trying to go after Levon and then to make a counter strike, I would believe that this would be psychologically a clever idea. Okay, knowing Magnus, how clever and how experienced and how good he is, it's obvious that he's not falling for any kind of psychological tricks and games. He will just play his game. He will try to make sure that he controls the happenings over the board, and if he will get a free chance to try to score, then he will definitely score. So Levon, first of all, has to play a perfect game with the black pieces, also to get confidence, because otherwise, even if he makes a draw and then he gets the white pieces, he has to get some strength out of his next game, because we have seen that Magnus is dominating. He has won 2.5 half yesterday, and even that very last game, Magnus agreed to a draw in a technically winning position. Now today, Magnus has won again. So basically, at the moment, everything is on Magnus's side. So Levon has to somehow get the strengths first to believe in himself again that he might be able to pull up a miracle. But in order to do that, he has to play a very good game from the black side. And we also see that some games, Anish Giri, Maxime Vacher-Lagrave, I wanted to say that, yes, let's see another Najdorf now. Let's see how Anish will react to Maxime's Najdorf, but no, Maxime says, no, thank you very much. I'm not interested in a Najdorf debate. Let me just play play my Rouser, which I have been playing the Alireza system. You know, seeing Maxim playing the Alireza system, the Rouser, I'm also wondering that now we know that Alireza is living in France and even close to Paris, as I know. Then is it possible that these two players maybe sparring? I mean, I don't really believe that they are training together, but maybe they are sparring together. And then if, for example, Maxim had really played a lot of games with Firuza, then it could be also kind of natural that you pick up Alireza's kind of opening just as an experiment. This is again one of those kinds of things that comes to my mind. Maybe it's not true, but it could be logical.
I think that's a very interesting speculation because you are absolutely right that this is a line that Firuza employs himself. We know Maxime is a Knight-Off player, but all that said, yes, it's possible that the two have been training, playing together, picking up these ideas, exchanging them. All that said, I have to say that even these classical positions, these Rouser positions that we've seen Maxime play of late, really do suit his style. We often see this opposite side castling, which means that we can be sure that there's going to be a race for the attack. We know exactly how much Maxime enjoys it. Yes, it's not the Knight-Off, but I would say it's equally dynamic and an equally uncompromising opening. And especially considering that perhaps Maxime wants to do everything in his power to make sure that he doesn't show his Knight-Off preparation before the candidates. I would say this classical option for him is a very logical deviation from it.
Yes, on one side it's logical, but you know, knowing how I'm thinking about the Rouser and how I'm thinking about the Knight-Off, it might be a big secret that I'm revealing right now, but I mean, I'm not playing already that much, so I don't mind. Whenever I see the Rouser, I'm very, very happy from the white side, and whenever I see the Knight-Off on the board, I say, oh no. I mean, that's you know, kind of the feeling I'm having, because I used to play the Rouser as a kid, as a youngster, and I encountered, you know, all those problems that against the super guys, when they were very well prepared, I was struggling, and finally, you know, I was saying that no more Rouser, I have to finish it because it's after all not that sound. And Vladimir Kramnik was also doing it. He was also playing the Rouser in the 90s, and then he abandoned it and never returned to it. So maybe also we are kind of not objective because we have our own memories, but it's kind of, you know, I always felt that the knight on c6 is too early committed to c6, because when it's Knight-Off, then black still has this knight bd7 setups as well. With the knight on c6, it's already so much clearer that what it's all about. And so for white, it's much easier to set up, you know, like here also Anish is doing all the logical, natural things. You decide whether you go into these sharp, crazy lines like now with this g4, h5, g takes h5, or you take it into a different direction as Anish has already did in the match. So yes, that's kind of my feeling about the Rouser.
Very, very interesting. So you're very happy when your opponent plays the Rouser and you hate it when you face the Knight-Off. Well, the good news for our viewers is that if you want to face either of these lines, there are some amazing courses on Chessable by the world's best. If you want to avoid these lines and go 1d4, there is a lifetime repertoire on that as well. So depending on your style and the kind of positions you enjoy, do go on Chessable and check out all the opening courses that are there by some of the biggest, well, not some, all the biggest names in the chess world. Peter, this Alireza position, what do you make of it? I see the time situation looks like both players know and are familiar with what's going on. Is this a line that you're familiar with?
Yes, I'm kind of familiar with it, and it was also the line that happened yesterday, but there are some little twists. There, black allowed white to get a5, and then he was stopping the a pawn with a5, a6, but now he stopped. First of all, it's not true. The point is that in yesterday's game, somehow Wesley did not put the knight on b3, did not play the traditional way. He started pushing his pawn a4, a5, and then when black played a6, he was also playing b4 and c3. He tried to get this pawn chain, but it turned out that actually black has a lot of dynamics with the very same idea that happens also in the game. But now Wesley basically with this bishop d2 move, targeting the a5 square, you know, sometimes knight a5 might be an idea, and then go c4 and so on. So it's kind of logical that after bishop d2, black plays the move a5, and now Wesley goes a4. This is now a different structure, but Alireza is trying to do exactly the same that he did yesterday, that he's not committing his bishop to g7. And that's another reason why the move a5 had been played, because if you are playing something like queen c7 immediately, then you are actually facing bishop b4, threatening to go bishop d6, and then trading down the dark square bishops is also one extra option for white. So the move a5 makes perfect sense. A4, queen c7, c3, and Alireza again not playing bishop g7, but playing the move f6, and after ef6 going knight g6, he wants to make sure that his bishop lands on d6, and we had seen in yesterday's game that this bishop on d6 was creating very, very big pressure on white's king side. So it's a very, very ambitious way of playing this. But now look at Wesley. After yesterday's experience, he is already much, much familiar with the position, and he goes now for a direct c4, basically making sure that he will be able to open up the position. He's also targeting with rook c1, eventually the c file. He's also targeting the pawn on a5 at some point. For the moment, the pawn on a5 is protected, but I mean, imagine white plays something like rook c1, and then also combines it with queen e1. How do you react to bishop takes a5? If you ever gonna play the move b6, then after rook c1, queen e1, and b6, something like c takes d5, you will really have a big problem on the c5 because your c6 pawn is weak, yeah? So very, very sneaky idea there by Wesley. And it might be, you know, that it will be the punishment of black's play, because black's play is very ambitious, but it's somewhat artificial, right? I mean, black's king is still in the center, and if white is very energetic, that there should be a way of making use of this.
That's quite an insane Caro-Kann. Where is Erwin Lamy when you need him the most? He's the one who's done a course on this. But yes, you're totally right. Bishop d6 is a move that does annoy white a lot. A threat of g4 already in the air, eyeing that h2 pawn, removing the key defender from f3. Bishop d6 makes sure that the e5 square is under control. White might want to play c5 here to make sure that the h2 pawn remains defended, but that's exactly what black wants then. Then there are no more these ideas of rook c1, putting pressure on d5, opening this up. Also, after a move like c5, black will always be able to strike in the center with e5 after falling back with the bishop, or even maybe trading it on f4, making sure that the a5 pawn, this bishop on d2 that eyes the a5 pawn, gets traded. I like bishop d6. I think very instructive by Alireza to not hurry up taking that f6 pawn. You know, he takes that slow. That pawn is not going anywhere. He moved that knight to g6, completes his development, asks white to take a decision in the center, currently threatening g4, attacking h2. Also, as you were pointing out, a5 is a weakness, threatening to trade off these dark square bishop. Very nicely handled by black, all these problems, Peter, that you mentioned, by not hurrying to take that f6 pawn.
Yes, but still I'm not entirely sure how big the threat g4 is, because I will have the move knight e5, and it will lead to some more opening up the positions, and the king on e8 is not feeling that safe. So in this regard, I do consider that maybe the move rook c1 is maybe an interesting move anyway. And also somewhere a move like queen, yeah, and Wesley goes cd5. That was another question, that you can actually concretely after ed5 play the move queen e1. I'm not liking it, but actually there is this idea of hitting the king. So you are setting now some bishop d3 check. So black will have to play king f7 or play the move short castle. I don't know exactly which one. Okay, let's just put the king somewhere. Okay, let's go king f7, and all of a sudden I can already take the pawn on a5. But why am I not entirely sure about this, that black plays the move b6, and I feel that yes, I did win a pawn, but my queen on e1 is really misplaced. Black will be very fast of going some rook h1, rook h8, pinning me on the e file. The knight on b3 is misplaced. I mean, I'm not a person who likes to hunt down some pawns which doesn't seem to mean that much to the position.
It's a wild position, and really anything can happen. This is what Alireza needs to create something strange. But meanwhile, strange things are also happening on the Hikaru board, and not exactly in the fashion that Hikaru needs them to be. I am not liking this position at first sight. This queen on d1, just the way the pieces are cramped for white. Meanwhile, black just looks like he's done everything very naturally, developed the pieces, already created a pawn storm, a minority pawn storm on the queen side. I don't really see white being able to open up the center. It looks like an opening gone wrong for white.
Yeah, definitely doesn't look good. Okay, so d5, e5, knight e4 is played. So Jan is trying to play very energetically. I mean, he feels like this is his momentum. He wants to make use that the pawn on c2 is vulnerable. So if white would just go for taking, then end of the day, the c2 pawn is falling. I don't know if immediately or just even a move like rook d8 might be very strong. There are certainly very interesting possibilities here for black, because white's queen is very bad. Bishop on d2 is kind of pinned, but maybe also there is no reason to sacrifice the pawn like this. Maybe there is something even more. I mean, I did not want to take knight c2. I felt like the knight on d4 is so nice, and this tactical move like queen c2 was maybe too much. I finally didn't believe in it. So I'm just assuming that Jan is relying on some very big domination. I mean, he is just very, very active in this position. If he already opted for this, because, okay, black had so many different possibilities here, there was just no reason to go d5, but it was very, very tempting. And you see, Hikaru says, no, I don't believe in this knight takes e4. I don't want to give up my best bishop. The bishop on this is the soul of my position. And he goes knight e2, trying to trade off this passive knight for the dangerous d4 knight. But okay, I mean, black can also just move the knight to f5, maybe. Where does white put his knight? Does he still continues with knight g3? I'm not
with knight
really.
g3 is not possible after knight f5.
Exactly, it's not what I'm believing. But otherwise, then after knight f5, how do you react? Because this knight on e2 gets stuck.
And you don't want to go g4. You're definitely not prepared for a move like g4. I think it can just be simply met by knight h4. And look at that bishop on b7. It could be such a monster. Knight d4 doesn't hang in there. You can start putting pressure on this knight already. If white goes knight d4, moves like bishop c5, queen b6, just battering up on this diagonal. This g4 is not the kind of move you want to go for. And after knight f5, also taking on e4 doesn't look like an option. I'm not really understanding why knight e2.
Yeah, well, I think it was connected with the fact that Hikaru is just very, very unhappy with everything that happened. I mean, we have to say that Jan again managed to surprise him. He played now the classical Taimanov pause and with queen c7, and we have been seeing that Hikaru did play the line bishop e3 against LM Pisho when he was expecting the pause and Taimanov, but it was also the line that Jan Nepomniachtchi himself used against LM Pisho later in the tournament. So probably Hikaru felt like, no, I'm not ready for this game, for this theoretical discussion. Let me change. But this f4 a6 knight b3, I mean, usually black goes often queen b6 in the Sicilians to ask white to move the knight back to b3, and then black goes back to c7. So in this regard, I do feel like this is somehow mixing up things. This is definitely not the way you should be playing, but okay, very natural play by Hikaru. However, Jan immediately using the fact that white is somehow just not coordinated enough, and he pushed the queen back to d1, and this is how we reach this position. And now knight f5 on the board, played by Jan, and it's white to make up his mind.
Knight f5, he goes for it, and big questions to Hikaru. He's already down a point in this match. Definitely not the kind of start you want with the white pieces. Peter, let's get an update on the Anish board. We've been debating Maxim's openings and the choices that he makes. I think this is still a very, very interesting position, very dynamic. We see opposite side castling. Maxim finally decides to go for short castle. The A file is open. White can build up pressure along the G file and the G7 pawn. I do like the fact that white still is a little far away from getting his knight to D5, because if that was to happen, that would be absolutely disastrous for black. What is your evaluation? Can you break down this position for us? And how did we even get here?
Yeah, well, one of the reasons also why I just moved back one move is that it's quite a stunning moment that move 25, breaking news, black castles. I mean, usually this is not the moment black usually castles on move 25, especially not in a very, very sharp open Sicilian. But yeah, in this game it did happen. And I did feel like, this deserves a special mention. Okay, very quickly, we're going to see how did we get here. The position itself is sharp enough. So this is where we left off. B4 is played. Knight e2, a5, standard play. White plays c3. We have seen this yesterday as well. Anish is trying to fight this b4, a5 pawns with c3, because if black would take on c3, then white would say, thank you very much, I want my knight on c3 anyway. So Maxim is not interested, and he plays this f6. We have seen yesterday also some f6 moves, and we were like shocked at what is this. But again, it's based on the fact that black wants to kill the knight on e2. So he does weaken this d5 square, but since the knight is not able to jump there, it's kind of justified. Anish immediately goes for the trade of the light square bishops because black has weakened all the light squares, so very logical. Black in return makes sure that he will get a queen e6 tempo because the queen on e6 is wonderful, covering the light squares, and it will come with a tempo. This is quite tempting. Anish going for takes b3, queen e6, rook h2, f5 played, breaking the center, bishop g5, and this is fe castles, the special moment when black castled. And Anish says, you know what? I believe that you are fine if you get a move, but I'm gonna collect this pawn, and it's not just about the pawn, it's about the knight finally reaching c3 square, from where it can head to d5 or eventually to b5, because yeah, Maxim immediately goes queen a7. So knight c3 is also nice that the rook suddenly defends the second rank, and that's why I was not sure if the knight wants to go to d5 or maybe even to b5, because knight b5 a4 construction would be also very, very nice way of just defending the queen side, which is actually white's king side at the moment.
That's actually very interesting that Maxime finally castles on the 25th move, and it turns out that immediately white trades off the bishop, and Anish goes for the pawn grabbing approach, saying that he's got everything under control, just too few pieces. And we're speaking about this, the d5 square, the knight finds itself en route to that. Of course, it's a little scary to pick up these pawns in front of the king because you open up all these files. But surprisingly, it's the rook on h2, I think, that saves the day, coming to the defense from the second rank. A move like rook b8, does white have the opportunity to go queen d6, or is that just getting too greedy? Because I also see rook b3, but surprisingly enough, let's just have that line on the board. There's of course queen c4 check, but also to just point out that after rook b8, queen d6, rook b3 probably doesn't work anyway because there's a takes b3 and queen a1 check, king c2, and we find that the king eventually does run up because the knight on c3 defends. So Anish can afford to get as greedy as he wants in this position. The evaluation bar seems to say that picking up this pawn was a safe decision. The only thing I feel is that black needs to find a way to get his knight from h5 into the action, either via f6, putting pressure on the e4 pawn, or he's gone for it immediately. He makes the move knight f6. It also threatens, it also makes sure that there are ideas like knight g4, not allowing knight d5. If white was to go knight d5 right now, black can trade that knight because rook d5 can be met with a move like rook f1. I like this idea, and I think queen d6, Maxime is relying on the queen entering white's position from e3. The queen on a7 not just puts pressure on the a2 pawn, but imagine if this queen was to come to e3, it can create a lot of new threats as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I believe that white is just so much better because it's not just about the pawn, but by activating the knight to c3, getting the rook into the game, and there is just no reason for white to be greedy now. Just something like rook hd2 is a very nice way of, making sure that everything is nicely covered. Moves like knight b5, a4 are also hanging there, but for the moment I see that there is some incredible development in the Vestiso Alireza Firuza game. I mean, look at this after cd5, ed5. Vesti did take like 5 minutes almost. I had the feeling like it was like 5 minutes, and he came up with this stunner move, bishop d3. I don't know exactly if this is good or bad, but definitely a completely stunning move after bishop takes d3, sacrificing another bishop with bishop takes a5, and after rook takes a5, queen takes d3 is now on the board. What is really happening? I mean,
but what is the point, Peter? If black just defends the knight with a move like king f7, we anyway want to step away with the king and get our rook into the game. Knight a5, queen a5, you've got 2 pieces for the rook. How is white continuing here?
Yes, well, I'm expecting something like knight takes a5 and queen takes a5, move like queen f5. I think this is the whole point, targeting the knight on d7. You cannot capture on f6 because of knight e5 check. That's really bad news, because whatever you take on e5, d5 will win the game, and you have to take. And if you go back queen c7, then probably white will play the move rook a1 or rook fe1. I mean, it's basically doesn't really matter. Still, you are not able to take on f6, and then white has all kinds of initiative. You cannot play rook e8 because the knight on g6 is hanging. I mean, it's some incredible calculation by Wesley. I mean, I think it's if it really works, it's just a stunning idea. I mean, just really incredible.
Just amazing. Let's just back up, Peter, and break that down again, how that happened. Those finding these hanging pieces on g6. I mean, you put this position and this move, bishop d3. Just take us through these last few moves one more time, because this is brilliant play by Wesley.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, bishop d3, you have to take. Of course, you say, thank you very much. You gave me a piece for nothing. Another sacrifice comes in, bishop takes a5. Kicking settling the queen. That's why black has to take. There is no other move. And now white takes, queen takes d3. So he takes back one of the bishops and targets the knight on g6. That's a very, very big tempo. And we have seen that the seemingly natural move, king f7, looking like this is ultra safe, is not safe at all, because then white collects the rook. Now, in order to be materially up, black has to capture the knight, and white gets this very, very important, powerful attacking move, queen f5. King f7 on the board, so we might be seeing this line. Yeah, knight takes a5, queen a5, and I'm expecting the move queen f5 to be played. That seems to...
Go on, Peter.
Yeah, that seems to be the point, and it's, first when I saw it, yeah, queen f5 played. Now I saw it, it looked like, it's very interesting. Now the more I'm looking at it, I don't really see defense for black. I mean, it looks like it's even much longer than it looks.
I mean, bishop d3 for me is the move of the day so far. What an incredible find by Wesley, completely changing the evaluation to his favor. Queen f5 played, the knight on d7 needs to be defended. Not just that, knight e5 is a big threat, Peter. We were looking at the line queen c7, trying to delay white from getting to e5. Rook e1. Can black try and set up some kind of a blockade, let's say with a move like knight f8, knight d to f8? The idea is that after knight e5, which is just so scary, I hate the move knight f8 because it blocks my rook on h8, but I also need to find a way to fight against queen e6 check. Let's just put the black knight back on d7 just to point that out, that besides ideas of knight e5, queen e6 is a big, big threat. Knight d f8 here. We're also getting a very big update that Jan Nepomniachtchi has won his game against Hikaru Nakamura. That was an absolute disaster for Hikaru from the word go with the white pieces, which means that Jan takes a 2-point lead in their final set.
Yeah, exactly. And he only needs a draw with the white pieces in the very next game to seal the whole match. I mean, it's not just that he's winning these 2 games, but also yesterday he took over after this big loss in the first round. I mean, Jan seems like, ever since he started playing really seriously, I mean, he is almost unstoppable. And this is actually a very, very scary moment, because usually when Jan starts rolling, he has no intention of stopping. I don't know what has to happen so that Hikaru is still able to bounce back. For the moment, it looks like Jan is just in a brilliant shape.
And meanwhile, he decides to go queen d8. Others are not going for queen c7, so he makes the move queen to d8. That's an interesting choice. And I still don't see a way for black to actually pick up the f6 pawn. Queen f6 is not an option because of queen d7. And knight f6 also still runs into knight e5. After rook e1, what this seems to tell me is that he perhaps wants to make the move rook e8. But let's not forget that even after rook e8, white can actually just trade the rooks and bring his other rook to e1.
Yeah, and also one thing I wanted to mention why the move queen d8 looked to me inferior, because in the line that you were trying to make knight df8 to defend, even there with the queen on c7, I was thinking about rook e7 check, but now with the queen on d8, this rook e7 check looks even more devastating, because the king will not be able to run to d8. Okay, you can run to d6, so maybe it's a little bit too much, but just to illustrate that what I was talking about, like takes, the other rook joins the party, and with queen on c7, then black could at least try to run to d8. But here you can run to d6, and maybe it's actually everything under control, but still, now the move knight e5 looking very, very strong.
Knight f7, knight g6, knight takes e5, queen e5 loses on the spot. This looks horrible. Let's quickly point out this idea of queen c7, knight f8. Why this was coming to my mind was that in this earlier line after rook e1, knight f8, if knight e5, what black might want to do is trade and put this other knight on e6 and say that, you know what, I have finally blocked these terrible e5, f6 pawns. Take a look at that king on f7, and the two knights doing a fantastic job of that.
Yeah, it was a brilliant defense. I mean, actually, maybe black is just clearly better in this position, because really now the pawns are wonderful shelters. That's why also the move rook e7 came to my mind, that I have to play probably rook e7, and it all comes down to these sharp lines like takes, king takes e7, rook e1 check, because after king d8 I still have this move queen f6 check, and black king has some real big trouble running away, because king c8 is met by rook e8 check. So looking very, very dangerous. And I'm also, you remember my very first instinct was to move the rook a to e1, because there is just no reason for it, because I don't see anywhere where white will break through with f4, but still it felt like this position calls for rook e1, and Wesley goes for it, and Alireza in a lot of trouble. Yeah, he goes knight gf8, making sure that this rook e7 check is better covered. But is he guaranteed safety there? Let's check it out, because rook e7 forces...
King g8 actually runs into rook g7 mate, so you can't fall back with the king. You have to accept the sacrifice.
Yes, so I'm opening up the f file. King takes e7, I give a check, and now we see that black goes king d6, and let's deal again with this knight e5 as before. I mean, looks, you still cannot trade on e5, and I'm studying knight f7 check. Looks very strong.
Completely lost. It looks like the kind of position you don't want to deal with at all.
Yeah, but I mean, it's white can just play the move rook e7 check. Maybe a move like queen a5. Is that a move like trying to create some counter chances? Because now, thanks to my knights protecting my king, I have queen a5. In the other move, it was not possible. But still, you can maybe just move the rook to e3, and okay, but now I can go king c7 at least. Yeah, knights king e7. It's a different story maybe.
The other thing that comes to my mind, but I'm not sure if it's working, is the idea of going b4 here. b4, queen b4, rook b1, trying to win a tempo like that.
Okay, this is...
But then you have queen d4 perhaps.
Yeah, I will collect on d4, and I'm defending back on h8.
Yes.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this idea doesn't work.
Yeah, so basically knight gf8, a very, very nice result by Alireza. He definitely has foreseen rook e7 check, and he believes that this is his best construction, how he can fight against it. Besides the very similar idea that we can talk about as in the previous line, it's not as effective, because the knight g6, knight e6 blockade was even more good, but even better, but knight on e6 is anyway good enough. I mean, this is a dream scenario for black, so this is definitely not going to happen. The big question...
Peter, can you just take a look at this rook e7? It's on the board.
It's on the board, yeah. Okay.
On the board, and bishop e7 blitzed out because queen...
sorry. You know, after fe7, king e7, not to give rook e1 check, but to go knight e5 immediately. I think maybe that's kind of the very brutal move. King e7 and knight e5 immediately, not rook e1.
Because rook e1 check is so natural, and he goes for it. Has Wesley missed this queen a5 idea, Peter? Because it's not very easy to spot queen a5, knight e5. The line.
Sorry, queen a5 loses to knight c4 check. Wonderful.
That is stunning.
Wonderful. Yeah, this is just brilliant. Yeah.
This is amazing. Yeah, just take the knight on c4 and queen a5 is hanging. What a brilliant fork.
Yeah, this then explains why Wesley just goes knight e5 immediately, because I felt like, you know, if this king d6 runaway was important, then actually maybe the move knight e5 would have been a very, very nice alternative, because I'm simply not letting your king run because of knight f7 check, and I still want rook e1. But maybe here black will play the move queen a5. Maybe black has something. But if after rook e1 check, king d6, knight e5, this queen a5 move is not working, then it's all good for white.
You know, earlier the question was, has Wesley missed the idea of queen a5? But looking at Alireza's reaction right now, I think it's just that question of missing that one more move. You just pointed out that queen a5 makes you wonder if it's actually Alireza who missed knight c4, because knight c4 can just so easily be forgotten. It's just so hard to spot this move. Peter, that was an incredible line that you just showed.
Yeah, it's because you know, first I got so excited that with queen a5 I'm hanging in there, yeah, because it looks like otherwise black is kind of lost. The move king c7, which would be desirable, runs into knight f7, winning material, and okay, the best thing you can do is trade the queens, but okay, we all know that this is just hopelessly lost because the knight is coming back and the knight is not in any danger. And if not for queen a5, then there are just no moves. Actually, the game Magnus Carlsen, Levon Aronian is quite uneventful. It's going to be a draw. I mean, a very high-class game, but nobody really created any chances there. And Anish Giri won.
Anish has created a lot more than just chances here. He is 3 pawns up, and this queen on e5 makes sure that the king is very, very well defended, taking care of this long diagonal. Queen f5 check. He has to go what?
No, Maxim resigned already. Maxim resigned.
Is just over?
Yeah, it's over because queen f5, king h6, rook c6 checkmate. And if the king goes back to the 8th rank, no matter where, then the rook c8 checkmate is coming. So Maxim just resigned with his move rook g2. So
when you put on this position for a moment, I thought it's still black's move there. And to see that it was white's move, he's just getting checkmated. Wow, so that means Anish Giri takes the lead in their match. Magnus Carlsen has drawn his game. Levon Aronian with the white pieces, he will actually need to win the next 2 games. Winning just one is not enough for Lev.
Yeah, but I think it's very, very important in such moments to forget about winning 2 games. I mean, you have to go step by step. Just make sure that you win 1. And look at this, what we are witnessing here, that, yeah, Alireza did find the defense against knight f7, but it comes at a cost. That after rook h7, and Alireza resigns, yeah, because rook h7 was met by simply knight takes d7, a very, very simple little move. Easy to be missed because you are thinking about how white is trying to checkmate you. But after taking, black cannot take back with the knight because then the rook is lost. If the rook takes the knight, then you get checkmated with queen e5. Then the king is in the box. And like in the game after queen takes d7 recapture, white simply gives also the checkmate with queen e5. So a stunning win by Wesley. I mean, really brilliantly played. This bishop d3 was move of the tournament.
Wesley just continues to impress and just doesn't stop. I mean, before this tour started, you know, one would consider that Wesley, of course, is a force to reckon with. But the way he's been playing this this entire tour so far, and of course, the aim of the Champions Chess Tour is to find the best player in these formats. I have to say that with his consistent performance, yes, he didn't win the Athens Masters, but despite that, the consistency that he's shown throughout the qualifying and the knockout stages in all the events, I have to say that so far the king of this format seems to be Wesley So.
Yeah, I mean, I perfectly agree. I mean, the level of play of Wesley, and you know, this is actually what I feel, you know, about the super GMs and Wesley So in particular, that he plays according to his beliefs. He plays according to his repertoire. And yesterday he has been kind of surprised by this f6 idea, yeah, that this f6, e takes f6, knight g6, the bishop coming to d6, creating all these dangers, yeah. And just less than 24 hours passed since that game, and he already understood exactly all the dynamics of these positions, yeah. It's just stunning. I mean, it's not preparation, yeah. It's because he did not even expect that Alireza will repeat it or not or like this, but he just probably spent like 20 minutes with this type of positions, and he got the essence of it. Yeah, all these little finesses, like starting with bishop d2 in the very early stages on move 9, going into this structure, because kind of anticipating that, yeah, if Alireza again wants to play this queen c7, f6, e takes f6, knight g6 stuff by trying to get the bishop to d6, then I need some completely different configurations. And then, because he believing that he kind of finds the essence, then he also was able to think here like 5-6 minutes, I don't exactly know how much, and then came up with this cd bishop this. I mean, this is like from a different planet. I mean, this is really something amazing. This is what we would expect from some ultra supercomputer, yeah, like AlphaZero. And if AlphaZero would be doing this, we would be saying that, yeah, of course, this AlphaZero is incredible. But Wesley is doing it as well in a rapid game. Yeah, after thinking for 5 minutes, just so brilliant, and I'm so happy to witness this, because this was a really very special moment for a rapid game. This is a stunner.
I am just absolutely amazed with this. I mean, I said it, Peter, for me, bishop d3 has to be the move of the day, maybe even the move of the tournament so far. Let's bring on the results of round 2 of this deciding set, which will determine who our semi-finalists are. Magnus Carlsen looking well on his road. He just needs a draw in the next game to finish the match off. With no chances to come back, the match will be a wrap, the set will be a wrap, and Magnus will qualify. So Levon, to start with, as you pointed out, one game at a time, needs to win the next one. Wesley So against Alireza Firouzja, I mean, I just don't know what more to add to that. That entire game that he played, and we saw in the end Alireza's reaction as well. He was sitting on the computer, he had a smile on his face. I think for a lot of these players, yes, it's disappointing, but they also know, they know it when their opponent has created a masterpiece. And I have to say that Wesley just made it look incredible. He just made it look like it doesn't matter if it's a strategic position, a solid position, even in these dynamic natured situations, he is absolutely at the very top. Anish Giri also leads his set, which means that Maxime has to win one of the next 2 games to take it into playoffs at least. And Hikaru Nakamura against Jan Nepomniachtchi, he's down 2 games. Once again for Hikaru, the same situation as left to start with. He needs to win at least 1 game. We're going to have liftoff in a couple of minutes, Peter. Let's get some fresh air, and we'll be back with all the action. Stay with us.
Hello to viewers of this Champions Chess Tour, and I'm Grandmaster Simon Williams, bringing you your puzzle of the day. So we're going to have a look at an encounter between 2 French Grandmasters. We have Robert Fontaine with the white pieces and the inflammable MVL, Maxime, who at the moment is on course possibly to be challenging Magnus Carlsen for the World Championship match. Now, MVL is a brilliant calculator, and in this position, you can see he's trapping that white king in a nasty position. And he can now force checkmate through a series of very good moves. Now, can you see this rather long sequence? I'm making it a little bit trickier today. So again, look for moves that are all checks, all moves that create threats, that try to attack that poor little white king trapped over there. And remember, when you have 3 or more pieces attacking your opponent's king, it can often lead to checkmate. So these puzzles are over on Chessable if you want to check them out there. But otherwise, I will bring you a solution later on in the show. Good luck. Well, the solution is to under-promote the f-pawn to a knight check. A very nice move. This is the most aggressive move, and it forces that king up the board. The king comes up to f4, and now we keep checking that king. The rook goes here, check, and now white is in a very difficult situation. If the king goes to e5, well, it's checkmate next move with something like bishop d4 mate. So the king has to go to g5. And now the second, I would say, tricky part of this puzzle. We have to keep attacking that king, and there's a beautiful way to force checkmate. Bishop e3 check, fantastic, giving up the rook The rook must be taken. There's nothing else that can be done. And now g5 check. And again, the king only has one square to go to. We keep checking that king. The king only has one square again. And now the pawn moves up, ambushing the king, checkmate. A fantastic finish from MVL, showing his real talent some years ago now, in 2007. Well, Garry Kasparov is a lot of people's favorite player, and a lot of people consider him the best ever player, which I think is entirely fair. Maybe Magnus Carlsen can catch Garry up at some point, but Garry dominated chess, winning everything for a period of 10 years plus. Every tournament he played in was his. Now, this is an important game from his World Championship match in 1985. A lot of people's favorite World Championship match, when they're asked what it is Bobby Fischer versus Boris Spassky in 1972, the famous match in Reykjavik, which they made a film out of. But my most favorite encounters were the Karpov-Kasparov encounters. Probably nearer my age. I was born in 79, and this was played in 85, and maybe when I started playing chess. My dad was really into the matches, and that came across in my love of the game. And they were legendary encounters. But this was really important, this game here, for helping Garry get the crown, which he thoroughly deserved. Now it's black to play and win. And what sequence of moves should you now play as black to ensure a win in this position? And the cleanest win you can get without allowing any counterplay. Well, maybe the first move is the trickiest, Queen A7, because this is rather a hidden move. This is the kind of move which, it's easy to miss in actual fact. The queen sneaks onto this diagonal with a check, and really Karpov can only move his king into the corner. Had the king come to this square, there's a number of good moves, but one such move as knight e3 is good enough to win. When this knight can grab that one with check, be a little bit careful taking the queen because a rook takes e8. But after king h1 now, we now look for the forcing moves, and we can take on g2. And here you've got to now think about the best continuation. And if you stopped with knight e3 check, double check, well, this might be good enough to win, but it does allow a little bit of counterplay. For example, let's say the king moves, you take the queen, I can take this one, and here you can see the king's a little bit exposed, should be winning. Karpov, very practical player, didn't want to allow any of that, and he played knight d4 check. The point being, when the king moves this time, he can simply go a whole rook up, well, a piece up, should we say, with an ongoing attack. Lots of pieces up. Can I count? Let's count. Yes, lots of pieces up with an ongoing attack and no counterplay. And this is a very good technique. When you have a good position, one of the things that people really struggle with is converting advantages. And the biggest advice I give is, if you've got a choice between two lines, one of them might even be favored by the computer, but it's complex. If there's a simple option, which is very, very, very good, keep the simple option. Don't overcomplicate in case you've missed something. Don't allow your opponent a sniffle of counterplay. Botvinnik was the father of the Soviet chess school. He really, with his approach to chess, his scientific approach, coming from a scientific background, led to a big boom in Russia and led to many future world champions. Now, on his way to becoming world champion himself, he defeated such greats as Capablanca, as he did in this game in 1938. And the tactic that he now uses was quite brilliant. And seeing it all the way through is very, very hard. But what you should be looking for here is really some forcing moves that create an opening against the black king. See how far you can calculate. It does go 11 moves deep, this one, the game, but just try as hard as you can. Now, remember, if you haven't got an immediate move, you need to force a problem in your opponent's position. And I'll give you a clue. The queen is defending the knight, and we want to do something about that here. Can you not just find the first move, but try to find a follow-up as well? Well, bishop to a3 is this brilliant distracting move, moving that queen away from its defense. Yes, we give up a piece, but now we're able to play the second blow. And the second blow is knight to h5 check, a beautiful move. And after pawn takes h5, the point should now be a little bit more clear. Queen g5 check, and then queen takes f6 check. The black queen has been moved away from its position, and the black king can't go to e8 because it would be checkmate on d7. So it has to go to g8, and now just simply e7. And even though this position, okay, it looks good for white, Botvinnik, and hopefully you as well, if you got this far, well done, had to calculate whether there was a perpetual check here, because it looks like there's a lot of checks against your king. So that's really the next stage of the calculation exercise here. Can your king escape the checks? Well, let's have a look. And you can pause again now if you want to try and work that one out. Obviously, the answer is yes, otherwise we wouldn't be here, but try to work it out, guys. Well, the king has to come forwards in order to escape the checks. And now the key thing is this move, king takes h5. There's only one more check, and now the king can come back, and now there's no pawn on h5. We can block it and eventually escape on h5. Black doesn't have any more good checks. Queen f8 checkmate coming up next, and this is the end of a beautiful sequence of moves from Botvinnik. And if you got that far, you're doing incredibly well. Well done.
Air quality isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think about chess and esports, but it affects our focus, decision-making, health, sleep, and more. What's in the air you breathe? Find out with Air Things. Breathe better, live better.
Freedom!
So fresh, so new.
Freedom!
It's all for you.
All for you. Freedom!
Keep your ear to the ground.
Talking about the freedom.
It's the best show in town.
Let's show you that freedom.
So this is the broadcast tool here, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see in all its glory. You can see the notation. You can also see the engine evaluation next to each move, and also how long they spend.
What I like is you can make your own moves on the board. You can check the alternatives to what the players did. And even for the moves you make, you get the computer evaluation here.
Fantastic.
I think you get it quicker and better as a premium member, such as yours truly. What I also like, there is a chat function. You can exchange things with people from all over the world. If you want to see something else, let's say you're watching a tournament and you want to see all the games at once, no problem displaying. I have no idea how many games there are, like 128 games at the same time. Can do even more. This is a team competition. You click on multi-board.
That's beautiful.
You can see all the 8 games going on at once.
You can see the games and standings, which I...
What we got? I'll click around. Games and standings here.
Yeah. Analysis, if we click on that tab, that's
Let's
a nice
click on it.
You can see that it's a great little graphical illustration. The red line is 0, that is the absolute even mark. And if the white bars go up, the further up they go, the bigger the advantage. And the black bars show a black advantage.
Then there is a database, and here we get the alternatives. And if we click on a move in the database, bam, it gets played on the board.
Fantastic. And then the PGN can even be downloaded.
I like that feature.
Yeah.
Whatever tournament or game you're following, you click it and you open it in the program of your choice.
Yeah, and one of the great things I like to see as well is when we get a video from the playing hall. I like to see them in their seats, nervous, you feel the tension, you feel like you're there, don't you?
Chess is really becoming a spectator's internet sport.
Great that we can see that. I also love to see the fact that we can get in some of our friends to join us during the broadcast, and it's all interactive. That's what we love. And
A lot of overview functions there.
A lot of great functions there, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you take advantage of all of them. Let's get back to the commentary.
Keep tweeting us, hashtag C24Live. We love to hear from you. Ask us anything, mainly about Lawrence life, but if you have other questions, they're also welcome.
Also send us anything you like about Jan. Hashtag C24Live.
Absolutely.
Have you ever met Miss Lindy? She's a gal with the bright red hair. Now she stands high from all the rest. You know her anywhere. Well, she's mine. Yeah, she's mine. Well, I love that little girl with the bright red hair.
And queen takes f3. Oh, what is going on? Oh, this is going to be a fortress. I just don't see any hopes at all. This is very easy. Just rook back and forth.
Taking chess to the next level.
Wow. Wow.
Wow, yeah. Nothing else to say. Wow.
Creating the future of the sport. Introducing the Champions Chess Tour. 10 months, 10 tournaments. The world's best players online and on TV.
Let's not just look at openings move by move, but let's try to understand a little something and look at a few typical structures that can arise out of a bunch of main openings. And hopefully, understanding these structures and the typical plans and the ideas will help you a little bit in your own practice. Laurent, what structures will we cover?
So first of all, we'll cover one very famous structure, Carlsen structure, which can arise from the Queen's Gambit mainly, but from other openings as well, like the London system or the Caro-Kann.
So, fond childhood memories of the Carlsbad. Thank you. It's important for everyone to understand what's going on here.
Yeah, exactly. Then we'll have a look at some Rui Lopez, actually, which is the classical line, not the Marshall or the Berlin, but this classical position where White plays d4 and sometimes even goes like with the pawn on d5, or even sometimes taking on c5. We'll see some nice game of Bobby Fischer here, and some nice cup of game after d5.
Here you will share your Russian upbringing with us. You have all the classical education in the Rui Lopez. Some nice examples there, hopefully. Then we move on to the French structure, which I don't understand particularly well, but this position has always intrigued me. Who's better and why? What are the plans? Why can White hope for an advantage? Is a space advantage such a big deal? And the French structure can of course arise mainly via the French after moves like knight c3, knight d2 or a5, but we also have a small detour into the Caro-Kann, which is very similar but not quite the same. I've always been intrigued by this one.
Because the bishop can go out here, bishop f5, and it's of course assist times for black, but it's not. Life is not that simple, as we will see. And the last topic will be the symmetrical positions, which can arise basically from different move order, like the French exchange French or Petrov, we're showing right now, or even the Berlin Rookie one, where we will see an unfinished masterpiece from the current world champion Magnus Carlsen.
Right. Symmetrical positions here, we mean these positions where either side is missing an e-pawn that are very common in today's practice. So this series is not intending to cover every pawn structure imaginable, but we hope we show some that are instructive and relevant, and we hope that you'll enjoy it, maybe even learn something.
Air quality isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think about chess and esports, but it affects our focus, decision-making, health, sleep, and more. What's in the air you breathe? Find out with Air Things. Breathe better, live better.
Freedom!
So fresh, so new.
Freedom!
It's all for you.
All for you. Freedom!
Keep your ear to the ground.
Talking about the freedom!
It's the best show in town.
Let's show you that freedom!
Welcome back to the deciding side of the quarterfinals. We started the Magnus Carlsen Invitational with 16 players, and after today's 2 more remaining games, we will be left with 4. And there's a big task ahead for some of our players. Peter, let's get up our scorecard and the results that we've seen so far. Get our viewers up to date with what's going on. Levon Aronian, I have to say his chances look very little right now to make a comeback. He needs a miracle. Like we've been discussing, he is trailing the set and today's match as well. For this bracket to go into the playoffs, Levon needs to win the next 2 games. Wesley saw Ali Reza. Ali Reza is also in a similar situation where he doesn't only trail today's match, but also the first set that he lost, which means that Ali Reza also needs to win the next 2 games against Wesley So to force a playoff. Meanwhile, Anish Gary, Maxime Vacher Legrave, set 1 ended in a draw, in a tie. But today's match, the lead has been taken by Anish. Maxime needs to win at least 1 game and level the score. He is playing catch up here. But the bigger catch up is being played by Hikaru Nakamura, who's trailing the set by 2 points. I have to say, of course, Jan Nepomniachtchi, Peter, is just such a force to reckon with, especially once he's found his rhythm, once he's playing focused, he's serious, and we've seen him slow down a little bit. He's not blitzing and bulleting his way into these games the way we've been seeing him in the past. And when he does that, he is just so strong. But I have to say that Hikaru is no less. What do you think is going on in that matchup? Why is Hikaru currently struggling so much?
Well, somehow he had some trouble with his openings. I mean, the very first game, Jan managed to surprise him now in the Italian, got some very good position and converted it convincingly. And then in the second game, Jan also came up with a surprise from the black side. And Hikaru kind of came up with the approach during the game. Over the board, the inspiration, let's just play chess. But this let's just play chess approach against this informed Jan Nepomniachtchi is probably just not enough, not what you need. You really need some super preparation to try to put Jan on the defensive and then try to build your own confidence. But we have seen how this just play chess against Jan Nepomniachtchi backfired in the second game. I mean, suddenly, once grabbing the initiative, Jan simply did not slow down and didn't give Hikaru at all any chances of saving that game. Now the big question is now this situation like Jan is leading 2-0 in the match, changing the psychological course of the match, that Hikaru has nothing to lose, and now with the black pieces he will definitely try to go all in, because okay, with black you just cannot play your solid opening. So if now Jan Nepomniachtchi plays 1 e4, I'm expecting, I even don't know what to expect, because I would have almost said that, you know, it would be logical that Hikaru tries something like this, because we have seen this, that whenever he was like in a must-win situation, he jumped to the g6 Rui Lopez. But the big problem for Hikaru is that now actually Jan can again play the Italian with bishop c4, and it's very difficult there to create something really creative. Besides, if Jan wants to play the 4 knights, for example, and just play some very lowish positions, it already might mean that Hikaru after e4 has no right to play the move e5. That already brings us, that after e4, probably Hikaru will have to play c5, but again, it's not something that he had prepared, just he has to do it because of the situation. And I already see that the game between Alireza Firuza and Wesley So has started there with, and no, Jan Nepomniachtchi goes e4 and Hikaru goes e5 anyway. Will we see a g6? Will we see a g6 span? Yes, g6. I was right. You see, I told you, and credits also for Jan Nepomniachtchi for not thinking about the result. He wants to play a chess game because he could have played the 4 knights and just keep it very dry.
That was an incredible prediction, Peter, just completely going into the psychology of the match and the players here. Of course, going for a Berlin is definitely not something that Hikaru could do. We've seen that happen before, but this is not the round for it. G6, yes, it is an opening. Debatable, questionable, how objectively correct it is, but it does keep the play going. A little doubtful setup for black, but at the end of it, it's not clear. And the idea is just to keep the game going, keep the pieces on the board and waiting for that chance to come, especially because Hikaru is playing with the black pieces. I was also just thinking that this means that Magnus Carlsen, Wesley So, and Jan Nepomniachtchi in this round just need a draw to qualify to the semifinals.
Yeah, and look at this. Magnus goes for the Berlin. But we have already seen, we have to be very, very careful judging the Berlin that, okay, this is super solid, super safe for black. I mean, we have seen in this Champions Chess Tour that if black is not careful or he doesn't know exactly what he's doing, he can run into a lot of trouble because white pieces, the players with the white pieces seem to be very, very well prepared in all the critical lines. So it's much more sharp than people think. And look at this, wow. Alireza Firuza against Wesley So. Look at this, what's happening. And that's basically d4, knight f6, knight c3. Alireza playing the Jobava rapport system. But this was also becoming now quite topical, I think, especially online. Many people have suddenly picked it up in their repertoires. And after e3, e6, white goes g4 immediately, trying to grab space. Certainly a very, very sharp line. One would say that, okay, thinking about the classics, it should not really be objectively that good. But even, all these things like, the classical chess says that this is not good. One has to be already very careful about, because we know the influence of the computers, and computers has changed so much of these so-called traditional classical views that you have to do that and that, otherwise you are ending up in trouble. No, computer has shown that chess is so much richer. Of course, you have to know your classical rules, you have to understand what you are doing, but actually there are all these extravagant possibilities as well in chess.
Yes, but also given the match situation, I think objective evaluations of openings can be just thrown out of the window here, because the players need to create their chances. They need to create imbalanced openings, and that's the only way you can do it. Playing these offbeat lines, yes, objectively, whatever anybody says about them doesn't matter at the moment. And we can see that just wild positions on the board. I think Magnus's decision to go for the Berlin is completely understandable. Yes, Peter, you mentioned that the Berlin, we've seen the kind of poison it can have. But I have to say, the way Magnus has been playing, not just looking at the result, but how convincingly he sailed through, and the difficulties, on the other hand, that Lev has faced, you get the feeling that Lev is not at his best. So I don't even think it's about the opening. I just think that with Magnus going in for the Berlin, plus his form, plus Levon yet to find his rhythm, I just think that it's going to be very difficult for us to see a poisonous Berlin in this case.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I mean, Levon has to create something, and by going for the Berlin and ready to accept the Berlin endgame, it actually means that he will be really ambitious in the Berlin, because, okay, if you are not doing anything from the white side, you will not create any chances for yourself. And I do know that Levon has quite a lot of experience from the white side. I mean, he has won quite a lot of games. So I would not rule it out. But one thing I also wanted to mention, because you said that Levon is not in his best game. This is, I think, connected with Magnus. I mean, Magnus has been so incredibly powerful in this match, not giving Levon the chance of showing who really Levon Aronian is. Yeah, and that had been the key, because it's very easy to kind of, when you look at the score, then it seems like, yeah, Magnus is dominating, so probably Levon is playing badly. But no, it simply felt to me like Magnus was just too powerful, and certainly a miracle needs to happen now. But I mean, we have to go step by step. First of all, Levon has to create chances for himself to show why he's Levon Aronian. Yeah, I think that's step number one. Forget about result, forget about anything else. And if he managed to create a position where he can show his creativity, then he might be able to create chances. But he has to really go step by step, even forget about winning one game. Just play the position and try to play the best possible moves.
Meanwhile, Firouzja showing his creativity from the word go. He has managed to get Wesley to think a little bit. He's down to 12 minutes. I think the combative play and the decisive games that we've been having, I'm just very happy that we haven't seen any of those quick Berlin draws. And I think that's what is also the big difference between this knockout format compared to the round robin. There's just such little margin for those kind of decisions, which, by the way, Peter, reminds me that the crazy bomb cloud, the double bomb cloud draw that we saw, I am being told that on our YouTube Chess24 channel, that has something like 11 lakh views on it. People are loving it.
Well, I don't know if that's a good news or a bad sign. I mean, I'm kind of speechless whenever.
Peter, I would any day take a good laugh and a double bomb cloud over a Berlin draw any day.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah, of course. No, I also mentioned in the broadcast that, yeah, it was very, very stylish. It's not my style. Yeah, but I appreciate that. Yeah, there are people who definitely enjoy, and for sure, you know, for the audience, I mean, first of all, bomb cloud is something that you should never ever try out yourself. I mean, just have a good laugh when you see it happen, when finally the players play king e2, king e7 and draw, and that's it. I don't think that one should ever analyze or start analyzing the bomb cloud. That would be just way too much.
So while we couldn't get a direct response to the right line against King's Gambit, what we do know Peter is saying is he doesn't recommend the bomb cloud for anyone.
Yeah, but now bomb cloud apart, look at Alireza, and I know this trick, and I also know that the computer is, actually assessing finally, I think it's like 0-0, but it's a very, very sharp line. And look at the clock. I'm not sure if Wesley knew this trick, because this whole G4 stuff is kind of pretty new. I recently had a look at it out of curiosity, just, you know, trying to catch up with something like what is really happening lately in all these online games and so on. And then I kind of looked at this, and I discovered that, yeah, this bishop d3, because if after c4, white would have to retrieve the bishop, then black is just better. So the only justification of giving up your bishop is this sacrifice on h7, king h7, queen h5 check, king g8, g6, f takes g6, knight takes g6, and we get some very, very crazy long-term compensation position. I mean, nothing is really happening, but black's pieces are too far away, and white is creating some really dangerous threats. He just wants to go rook g1. He can also bring the other knight. You know, there are so many pieces that white can bring into the attack, and black kind of has to be like a computer in navigating here his way.
So Wesley finds himself in the waters in which we've seen him swim his way to the shore very, very often. Difficult position, needs to find the precise defense. He is slowing down, which of course means it is going to be over the board that he looks for it. And now, especially that you pointed out that white has got this idea of rook g1, queen h8, eyeing the g7 pawn. Yes, currently queen h8 is not a big threat. The knight doesn't want to take the rook on f8. He just wants to build an attack. The first move that would come to my mind is a move like rook f5. I want to get rid of this queen. I want it out of the way. Queen h8, king f7. I think I'm still not getting checkmated unless I'm missing something. Is rook f5 something that black can consider? Because if you fall back with the queen, I would be the happiest person.
Yes, I understand that you are happy. I mean, yeah, queen h8, king f7. Now, if I give knight e5 check, you will be very happy taking on e5, and you will be.
He goes for it. He goes for rook f5. I think it's a very natural move. You want to get rid of, and immediately blitzed out queen h7. This is the point. So he keeps the queen going. He keeps the pressure on. Rook g1 is still what he wants. Can black try and insist with a move like queen g8? But he can't, because you take and the e7 bishop is hanging. So that's not an option anymore.
Yeah, I mean, okay, this queen h7, of course, is the whole idea of white. It's absolutely logical. But, I mean, the question is, what is really happening? The point is that, yeah, black cannot play queen g8 because then white simply trades and knight takes e7 forks the rook. That's kind of the problem for black. But and otherwise, how do you get rid of this queen from h7? Yeah, and the rook on f5 is. Yeah,
I'm dreaming of knight d7, knight f8, but it does feel a little slow after, or knight f6, knight d7. Can we just take a look at this line? After knight d7, you do have the option to go rook g1, and suddenly you're threatening this knight h8 check and knight e5 check. Is black in time to try and defend the g pawn with a move like bishop f6?
Yeah, bishop f6 looks like almost the only move. I mean, you really have to protect, but yeah, this is very tricky.
Very scary.
I mean, also at some point, maybe white will have the chance of breaking with e4. I mean, also this move should not be ruled out, and then you are forced to take d, then knight takes e4, join the party. But okay, you have then knight f8, maybe just in time. But are you in time? It's also not entirely clear. I mean, super sharp.
Nothing is clear, and also it's not just the position that's terrifying. The scary part is also that you know that your opponent is prepared in this, and you are finding stuff over the board. You know, Alireza is blitzing out his moves. He clearly knows what's to be done. Bishop f6 played by Wesley, and look at that time clock situation, down to a little less than 8 minutes. First time Alireza slows down, which again brings the question to mind that if somebody's prepared in such a line and you slow down, that's an inclination or a sort of a idea that maybe that's not the top computer move that black has just made.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. But on the other hand, that's why it's so tricky that you can never really prepare everything till the end, because there are so many options. And now we also see that black is trying to go queen g8 now that he moved the bishop to f6. I mean, I really believe that at some point this e3 e4 will be a key extra resource for white, because white needs to spice things up, and the rook on f5 kind of invites this. Otherwise, this rook f5, king f7, bishop f6 idea looks very, very tempting. But maybe white can play something like e4. I mean, can I play e4? Now immediately d takes e4, but also my king is still in the center. So I don't know exactly if I take immediately on e4, or should I first include knight h8 check. This is, I'm not prepared here. I don't know exactly, but just for the fun's sake, if I start knight h8 check, you're probably gonna play the move king e7. I play knight takes e4, and I'm really worried that you're gonna take queen takes d4, attacking my knight before I can castle. Yeah, this would be my concern from white side. This doesn't look good, and the same also applies if after e4 d takes e4 I capture immediately with the knight on e4. Do you have the chance as well to take queen d4? Do you see some idea for white? I mean, I'm a little bit struggling here.
Especially because the knight on e4 is attacked. There's no time to go rook d1.
Exactly.
And you can't even move the knight anywhere because the f2 pawn is hanging as well. Queen d4 does look like it could solve problems. Instead of e4 immediately, is there It's hard to come up with a move as well for white. Bishop f6 and Firouzja going in for a think. Queen g8 is the idea. And don't forget, the queen on h7 doesn't have any other running away squares. So bishop f6 simply moves away from the knight, capturing the e7 bishop. Needs to go something direct because otherwise black goes queen g8. Peter, clearly this will be a game we'll be coming back to. Let's do a quick opening roundup of the other boards and get your evaluation on who you think has had opening success in our other games.
Yeah, well, I mean, one very important game is the Janja Pomjaci Hikaru Nakabu, and I believe that, you know, finally Hikaru got a position to his liking, because it's not just that this is a very nice position for black, but it's also very, very fighting. I mean, it's the chances that white will be able to just liquidate and shut it down doesn't seem to really exist. I mean, look at this. Black has wonderful knight on g6, bishop g7, queen f6, the rooks are ready. White has this weakness on f2. The bishop on g3 is again somewhat out of play. I'm always very, very skeptical in all these structures when white ends up with the bishop on g3. The knight now retreated from e3 to f1, showing that Jan is very, very unhappy with his position, because if your last move is bringing your most active piece back to base with knight f1, it shows that something really, really went wrong. And at this point already, Jan might regret of not having played, you know, something like the 4 knights and just shut the game down. He wanted to play a chess game, and now he gave Hikaru a chance to fight back. Rook e6 on the board. I mean, black.
The dream would be to try and trade off these heavy pieces, the rooks especially, and I'm just, of course, black wants to take control of the e-file. Just trying to think if white has a way, Peter, if he does trade on e6 right now with rook takes e6, queen e6, queen d2, I'm eyeing the g5 pawn as well as a threat of going rook e1. How would black react to this?
Yeah, this is kind of a solid way to proceed. Also, it's very, very irritating for me. I mean, I see the engine bar and look at this. Jan played the move, almost blitzed it out, the move queen d1. He's touching the pawn on h5, basically giving him the chance, like, please decide, do you want to go h4, then you weaken the g4 square, and then white's knight might be able to reach this wonderful square later on. Or if you play the move g4 and then white takes ag, then you create a weakness on g4 and white's bishop on g3 will be super stable. So black has to go for h4, bishop h2. Now the position looks already much, much more nice for white compared to earlier. I mean, I was a little bit really worried that whites end up in some really passive position without any chances. But I mean, chances, of course, it was more or less equal, but I mean, without chances to really create counterplay. Yeah, now Hikaru goes d4. It was the logical way, like the bishop moved from g3. So you asked the question that the pawn on f2 is weak. How do I attack it? By opening up the diagonal of my bishop. Yeah, so if the black bishop will be able to land on d4, then the pawn on f2 will be very, very vulnerable. But how do you do that? Do you go rook d8? Do you go what exactly? Queen e4? All kinds of possibilities, but probably white will be able to handle this.
You know, Peter, I have to say queen d1 was a very creative idea, but for all these reasons, I also liked this option of going queen d2, keeping the idea of rook e1 alive, defending the f2 square, attacking the g5 pawn. And Hikaru shows now how he plans to build pressure on the f2 weakness. He goes queen e4, centralizing the queen. It's a beautiful square for it. It threatens bishop takes d4 next. I think white probably, and now I don't know if white has time to go queen d2 anymore, because after bishop d2, rook e1, maybe it's still rook e1, there might be rook f2, which is what worries me.
Yeah, of course. I mean, rook f2 might be just game over, because look at this, the endgame after rook e1, rook e4, rook d2, king h1 loses on the spot due to rook d1 pinning the knight. I mean, just an illustration, of course, black was winning anyway, but it can really escalate.
So white needs to be careful. White needs to be careful, and he's gone for a check, queen b3 check. He wants to go maybe queen e3 is the idea, trying to trade off the queens. But that also, queen e3, queen takes d4. The game keeps going because you can't really take on d4, bishop d4. There's no good way to defend the f2 pawn.
Yeah, it's a very, very tricky position. I mean, okay, it would be nice to get this knight e3, knight g4 out, because then I kind of protect. So knight e3 would be very logical, but I mean, bishop takes d4, knight g4. Yes, I did get my knight to g4, but still my bishop on h2 is kind of stuck.
Queen e2 maybe?
Yeah, all kinds of pressure. Yeah, with my king on, yeah, queen e2 with double attack on the b2 pawn, on the f2 pawn. I mean, I would love to get this knight to g4, but I'm not believing that here it's really effective. But what else do I get? Another idea would be to go knight d2 and knight f3. But somehow I feel like after knight d2, you might be just able to cash in queen d4, knight f3, and then queen takes b2. And I'm frightened of disconnected pawns, so I don't believe that I can go for it.
No, this does look like it's trouble on planet Nepo right now. I mean, queen b3, king h8, and I again get this feeling, this idea of queen d1 just felt a little unnatural. You need that rook to come to e1. Of course, I'm hoping that you want to believe that Jan knows what he's doing, but it's very hard to find a way for white here to keep everything under control. Bishop d6 attacking the rook. Okay, that's an interesting option because I see rook f2 doesn't work. Luckily, rook f2, king f2, bishop d4. You still have this defense with knight e3. Otherwise, bishop d4 would have been checkmate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and okay, Jan finally goes for bishop e5. That was my other move. I mean, I just want to trade this bishop. I mean, this bishop on h2 is a dead piece. You have to try it, but on the other hand, this is not really equalizing. I mean, it's just trying to limit the damage, and that's why I feel like this is a very dangerous position from white side. That despite just one move before bishop e5, engine was still saying like it's zeros, but practically speaking, it's so difficult and so annoying to play it from the white side. He goes bishop e5, perfectly understandable idea to try to get rid of at least one of the light pieces.
I just feel that in this kind of a trade-off, the thing that intuitively comes to my mind, Peter, and I really want to hear what you have to say about it, is to capture it with the knight and keep the bishop on g7 alive. Knight e5 takes on e5, queen e5, and put pressure on the b2 pawn. That's the advantage of capturing it with the knight. But I also see if you take bishop e5 instead, d takes e5, and then suddenly you have this option of jumping in with the knight to f4, threatening mate. But in this, I think knight e3 will just keep everything under control.
Exactly, yeah. Suddenly the other knight on east is wonderfully placed because it protects the pawn on g2. Yeah, and Hikaru goes according to your line, your very first line, knight takes e5, making sure that you keep this bishop. I mean, this bishop protects the king beautifully, puts the pressure on the b2 pawn, and it looks like a primitive move, but how does white really try to protect this pawn? I don't really think that there is a way, because rook b1 would run into queen f5 double attack on the rook and on the pawn on f2. So maybe you will have to play a move like rook c1, but this is a very, very unpleasant move but probably you have to.
I don't see a way for him to defend the b2 pawn. He has to create a counter attack on the c6 pawn so that he can aim at trying to trade that. Rook takes f2, king f2, queen f4 is the other idea, but then that he needs to be careful about. And queen f3, you just pick up the rook, and there's queen h5, queen e8 check. What's going on here?
Exactly. I was trying to figure out that do I have a perpetual or not? Yeah, I also have queen e4, but also queen h5. I mean, both looks good enough for perpetual. So this would be at least a nice way for white, but a very scary line. I mean, Nayan has to take his time because it's a very, very unpleasant position and very risky one. I mean, if something backfires here, it might be just game over immediately.
All right, Peter, once again, let's move on to the other very crucial matchup, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave versus Anish. Maxime, in his final white of the day, he has to win at least one game to level the score. He does have the bishop versus knight here. Is this an endgame where white can hope to create any chances at all?
Well, he can try to hope for if he is fast enough. I mean, it's all about the timing of going knight a5 or knight c5 hitting the b7 pawn. I believe knight a5 because then after knight d, for example, knight a5, knight d6, white has ideas of advancing his pawn majority on the queen side. But black will try to get a timely b6 in. He will say that, okay, hang on, my king is very well placed. It's close to the center. So it does look like white has some initiative, but black should be able to neutralize. One thing we also have to mention that the pawn on g3, b6 was played immediately. That the pawn on g3 is weak. That's a very vulnerable pawn. White's king is kind of stuck to the defense, and black also has this lovely structure of eventually trying to create a h pass pawn. Yeah, this will be a very serious counterplay. That's why I believe that black should have things under control.
And I like what Anish is doing. He decides to keep this b6, a6 structure. He will move the a pawn to a5 if the knight, if the bishop starts attacking it, because you don't want to place your pawns on the light squares. And also moving this knight f6 back into defense just felt the kind of move you want to make. Instead of moving your knight f5 back into defense, it can potentially go to d4. You can also sometimes offer a trade now with knight d6. I see the evaluation bar. It does say that white is slightly better in these endgames. Can you tell us a perspective, a plan that white could actually have here to create a weakness in black's camp?
No, I think you should just ignore the engine bar, because engine plays his own chess. It's not connected with us, and it's definitely not connected to this endgame. I mean, if in some crazy position we are very excited to hear that suddenly engine jumps and we don't understand why it jumps to big pluses, we really appreciate it. But here, I mean, it's more about the position. It looks like black is perfectly fine unless some really big mistake would happen or some real big inaccuracy. I don't really see white creating any big chances here.
All right, so then let's move on quickly back to the Alireza game, because that looks like the wildest position in the current round. With this queen on h7, Alireza has to win on demand, queen on g8 and the knight on h8. I haven't seen, I mean, just take a look at that. Black queen e8, knight f8, queen g8, knight h8. This is not something that we see very often on the chessboard at the highest level. It's the kind of position you set up, and if you don't know who's playing black and white, you would just think it's two amateurs who've got this position on.
Yeah, well, this is also some kind of partisan attack. I mean, just coming from behind, trying to cause some trouble, and a very, very surprisingly dangerous one, because queen f7 was checkmate. So basically black, with his move queen e8, made sure that he covers the f7 square. But I mean, I see all kinds of dangers, like, you know, because the queen on g8 cannot really be challenged. Yeah? Black is not settling queen f7. Black is not settling anything. And this gives white maybe the chance of bringing his last piece into the game with rook he1 and then create d4, d5 ideas. And also there are some other ideas like rook g1 trying to take rook take g7. In any case, very, very scary scenario for black. And even the engine bar says that, you know, white's attack is probably very, very dangerous.
I'm actually surprised, Peter, that the engine bar is not giving a bigger advantage to white, because that king on e7 just looks like he's in so much danger, like a kill zone almost with queen e8. Yes, it's defending f7, but all the pieces completely cramped. The bishop from f6 cannot move. But of course, black does have an extra piece, so white can't take forever to build this initiative. At some point, if white can just get the break with d5 and manage to either open up the e file or the d file, that could be just game over. Is that something that white can hope to get directly in this position? Is d5 an option here?
Yeah, d5 is also an option, but the reason why I felt like, you know, I would like to first play rook e1, because if I play after rook e1, I don't see the next move for black. But if I hurry with d5, then after e takes d5, there will be the potential threat of bishop e6 targeting my queen. Yeah, that's why I felt like, you know, it would be very nice to just use this moment that you want nothing, and then I will. But the big question is, do I really have this time? I feel like I have, but maybe I'm mistaken.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. After d5, you often don't want to hurry in these positions. Rook on h1, get that piece into the attack. Why give your opponent the additional opportunity to improve his position? The bishop on c8 currently is a dead piece. After rook e1, if he goes bishop d7, d5 comes in with that much more power. Also, let's not forget the knight on f8. It's really trying to jump out, but it can't because there's always... He does have the move knight d7, and that makes me wonder if after rook e1, knight d7 is met by knight f6. You do have knight f6 still, so that doesn't work. Is knight d7 an option here?
Yeah.
Or you just take a knight d6 check?
This is a very important resource, yeah, because you remember I was telling you that I believe the justification behind rook h1 that black doesn't have a threat, but if there is knight d7, that changes a lot. One of the things that that can be very, very unpleasant, because also queen h7 is already a wrong direction. Besides, black has queen h5 idea immediately as well. So that's why Alireza opted for h5. But what does it change? So if knight d7, then he's trying to give knight g6 check. What exactly is happening? So if black goes knight d7,
knight g6, just king d8, and you can take and go knight d6, but not really sure. I mean, black already has an extra piece. Let's just show that line for a moment, that you trade queens, you go knight d6, black goes king d8, you pick up the rook, but this entire sequence of moves actually works for black perfectly because he ends up in this position with
exactly.
2 pieces for a rook.
This is like a dream scenario. Yeah, knight d7 on the board. I mean, this knight d7 is a great defensive resource. And what does Alireza rely on? He wants to queen his h pawn. I don't know exactly that. Does he consider maybe somewhere to take on f6 and then give, if g takes f6, then queen g7 check and then h6? But I don't really see it working, because after knight takes f6, I can even maybe just capture on g8, and after knight g8 start trapping that knight. Yeah, knight g6 check on the board, king d8 played. There was another way of here to maybe try to capture an f6, but it doesn't feel right. Knight takes f6 and queen takes g7 can be met by knight takes h5. And if there is no direct checkmate, then this doesn't feel like the right direction.
But I don't really see an alternative right now, because queen e8 is definitely an endgame with that knight d6 fork that white doesn't want to go into. It doesn't get him anything. Can we just see this line with knight f6 that you're pointing out? Let's just have that on the board. Knight takes f6. I don't think black can pick up the queen anymore because your king has stepped too far away to come and trap the knight. Knight f6. He's gone for the idea of trading the queens, and after this there's probably no follow-up, which is why he decided to go for this endgame that we've been talking about. 2 pieces versus a rook, 2 minor pieces for a rook.
Yeah, he has 1 extra pawn, but this is a little bit pity that he needs to waste the tempo on f4. It would have been so desirable to open up the h file immediately, but it runs into bishop g5 check at the end. So that's why h6 couldn't be really played. So white plays f4. He wants to get ready for h6, and he wants to make sure that he will have a fun, wonderful outpost for his knight on e5. I mean, practically speaking, this is still very, very much double-edged, but at least Wesley survived the incredible dangers, yeah?
100%. I think now the waters are a bit more calm. Of course, the game goes on, and Firuzha doesn't have an option but to play on. Wesley needs just a draw to qualify for the semi-finals. Peter, let's get an update on the Jan Nepomniachtchi Hikaru board, because I see that Hikaru has an extra exchange, a crazy pawn situation there. White's got these 3 pawns on the king side, black's got 2 pawns on the queen side. But I think with this extra rook, it's very hard for white to advance these pawns. The king will just be so weak once they start rolling, while black, on the other hand, can just go non-stop with it. Of course, he needs to be slightly careful. The queen and knight can be a bit of a pain to the king. Queen h6 check right now can be met with king g8. And then after that, suddenly the threat of rook f2, if the knight moves, becomes a reality. It's on the board. The knight on g4 now cannot move. I don't really see how white can... or does white just keep on giving checks with queen g6?
Well, but one thing I don't want to let it happen if the black king runs towards the queen side. Okay, maybe it's easier said than done, because it's not such an easy way to find the root. Because, okay, let's just give some checks to understand what we are talking about. So check, and after king e7, I have this very unpleasant queen g5 check, because you cannot run to the desired d7 square due to some knight e5 check, and king d6 would run into queen d8 check, and all kinds of. So this is what I'm talking about, that intuitively one would like to keep black's king on g8, but on the other hand, maybe exactly some direct checks business might work out in white's favor. I mean, white's favor is to give some perpetual check or to draw the game. Young goes queen e6. That was my very first instinct. Like, I don't want to give checks. I want to pin this rook. And yeah, Hikaru goes king f8 immediately.
Knight h6 was a big threat. And let's not forget, Jan needs only a draw to qualify for the finals right now. And of course, the black king is open. He does have this extra exchange, but the king needs to find itself to safety. If he's able to do that, then black would be completely winning. So white needs to make sure that he keeps the pressure going. But what is white's next move here? Because like we were pointing out, the knight on g4 is a little stuck right now, defending f2. How is white? Does he give a check on c8?
Well, but check runs into king g7, so I'm not exactly sure if I want to give a check. One of my points would be to maybe start moving the pawns, because h4 would give me the h3 square for the king. And if I could play h4 and f4, then finally I would be starting knight e5. The problem is that I cannot play the move f4 immediately because of queen d2 check. But yeah, Nayam gives the queen h6 check, just as with the previous line with queen g6, king f8, queen h6. He might, after king e7, play this queen g5 check, which is so unpleasant to face, because I just don't see where to run. King e8 runs into queen g8 check, and rook f8 doesn't seem to be a good idea, because then queen e6 check, king d8, queen b6 might be just very good for white. Yeah, king e7 on the board. Now I'm expecting queen g5 check. Yeah, it's played by Jan.
And king d6, there's queen g6 check, at least forcing the black king to fall back to e7, or queen d8 check. Both are possible options. Just a very difficult way for black to find the move so that the king is safe. Maybe it's just not possible. And we see the evaluation bar also gives it completely level. In fact, we are being confirmed that it is 0.0 everywhere in these lines, which means that white perhaps just continues to make life very difficult for the black king with just continuous checks. Meanwhile, Anish Giri and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave has ended in a draw. So going into the last round with the black pieces, Maxime will need to win to force a playoff.
Exactly, with the black pieces, that's going to be super tough against Anish Giri. But okay, for the moment we have enough action. I mean, Hikaru needs to find the way to keep the game going, and he goes king d7, probably the only way. It's the only way to...
Knight e5, what's going on?
Yeah, knight e5, and then you just move the king, but the c5 pawn is hanging at the end, yeah? So there is no square for the black king which protects the c5. So I'm expecting king e6. And after knight takes f7...
Queen f2.
Queen f2, king h1.
King f7. But if he just... Okay, he goes queen f1, but he can't repeat because, yeah, he goes king f7 eventually.
Yeah, and now okay, this queen d5 check will come, and you will lose the b5 pawn. But you might even not be able to run out of perpetual checks, because this pawn on gc and h3 are covering all the squares for black's king. So you cannot try to use that route. So he goes king e7, queen b7 check, king d6, queen takes b5.
And Hikaru just looking very frustrated on the camera there. He knows that this is also the difficult situation. You have to win a position that essentially is not winning. You would want to just take a draw and get up here, which would be a great result with black, a brilliantly played game. But the problem is the match situation just doesn't allow it.
Yeah, but also one thing, because it seems to me like Levon has just played a brilliant game. I told you, if Levon gets his type of position, then we can suddenly see the real Levon that we are so happy to see. And he just outplayed Magnus in this Berlin endgame. Look at this now. After this wonderful exchange sacrifice, because what has happened here, that Magnus, feeling that he cannot stop white's advance with f5, he relied on some special construction with rook e6. He has to stop f5, eyeing the e5 pawn, but Levon with bishop f2, basically creating probably some simply g4 and then ag, and then slowly going forward. So Magnus goes for knight d4 check, trying to trap white's rook on d5 after bishop takes d4, c6 being the idea. But now white has the move bishop takes e5, and he benefits with the fact that the rook on e6 is hanging after c takes d5. c d5 comes with a tempo hitting the rook, and now after rook h6, I believe you just bring back the bishop and you win. I mean, these are 2 pawns for the exchange. Yeah, bishop d4 played, 2 pawns for the exchange, and very powerful pawns. Black is completely stuck. I mean, you really would need this rook to be on c8 and try immediately penetrating to be claiming some chances. But with the rook stuck on h6, I don't see any way of putting resistance. So Magnus in a lot of trouble. Levon might be bouncing back. And what is with Alireza? So much action. It seems like Vasily has finally everything under control. Look at this. King on d6, very, very nice. Bishop on f6, knight on e4, bishop e8, very nice construction, controlling all the squares. Yeah, Alireza is trying to create some, he needs the c4 square, he needs to disbalance this b5 pawn, and both players are down to their 1 minute. So if Alireza could create some disbalance, I mean something that can force Vasily to burn the clock and go down to his seconds, then that would be a practical chance. I'm not seeing it yet, but it might happen. I mean, b takes a4, for example, just an illustration. Knight c4 check to the king, and if king c5, then some rook c7 check, and already king b5 is only move not to get mated, but then the d pawn starts to roll. Just to show why black cannot even think about capturing on a4, he was knight f2.
I really like that, because allowing this knight c4 check just felt like inviting trouble. Also with knight f2, if white needs to find a good square for the rook, I don't know if he should insert a takes b5, bishop takes b5, but at the end of it, he needs to find where to move the rook, because he also has to defend the d5 pawn. A move like rook d4, it does pin the e5 knight. Black can then start thinking about actually capturing that e5 knight, because after bishop e5, d takes e5, king takes e5, the rook is attacked. A move like rook d1 can still be met by knight e4. Maybe we can just have that line on the board. I don't know if it's going to work. So let's just see what happens if white does go a b5, bishop b5, and suddenly after rook d4, you have the option to go bishop e5 and pick up the knight. And rook d2 can be met by knight e4. So he starts with rook h6. That's a nice little trick. Attacking the bishop on f6, knight d1 is impossible. Rook f6 not only picks up the bishop, but also picks up the rook on a6. So that means that black has to actually step away with the king.
Yeah, king c5 played. Yeah, Vasily is usually so strong in this type of positions. I mean, even with little time on the clock, he's not afraid to go forwards. He's not afraid of ghosts. One of the very, very important things in such positions. Now, the big question is, what do you do with your rook? Do you maybe consider a move like d6, trying to use the moment that you can advance the pawn, but probably black can just take on d1. But I mean, this one, rook f6, and you can take on d6. Yeah, that's a very solid way. That's it. Because the trick would have been if you move the knight, then I have d6 and I'm winning, but this doesn't work. And Alireza goes for d6.
Let's just see this line. So knight takes d6, and knight takes d1, and can white go d7 here?
Exactly. Maybe he's trying to play, but d7 also, you can just take bishop d7. But okay, knight takes d7, king moves somewhere. I mean, where do you move? That's already one of the questions.
But even this line, even if you, let's say, move to d4 to start with, or... Okay, let's go king b4, Peter. Let's start with the move king b4.
Yeah, but okay, hang on. So after d6, maybe I can also start with bishop takes e5 first, yeah? Can I just make sure that I'm not running into this d7? Yeah, bishop takes e5 played by Vasily. because
So
now
no d7, and after d takes e5, you want to take d1, and after d7, you just go bishop d7.
now I just go bishop d7, yeah, and okay, this is what we're gonna be seeing, bishop d7, rook a6, and then I move my knight, and I feel like, okay, it's still super sharp.
Oh wow, not bishop d7. We're being told by Sachdev the brilliant move rook a8 here. Easy to miss, but once you spot it, and Wesley just doesn't miss these things ever.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, it looked like bishop takes d7 is only move, yeah, in the position. But yeah, rook a8 is just a stunning defense.
What a guy.
Yeah,
Just
because
amazing.
the difference is that after rook h8, now you take on d7 and rook takes a8, white is not starting to push e6. Yeah, because with the rook on a6, next move would have been e6, and I actually got really worried that how do I stop this pawn. But now with rook a8, it all makes sense because I'm winning that tempo that it's required. And Wesley down to 10 seconds on the clock finds rook
Required
a8.
to move away the knight. He needs to move the knight, and that's the point, that if in the other line he would move the knight, then Peter, your idea of e6. But now with no e6 in the air, black can move to safety, and these h and f pawn just give so much play to black. It just doesn't matter. Rook a6 still trying to get in e6, and I'm just wondering if black can ignore it and start pushing his pawns, or go for his safety first approach of falling back with the knight, and after e6 just moving the bishop and saying you don't have e7 anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it feels like knight d5, e6, bishop c6.
Or maybe bishop c8 as well, just asking the rook the questions, where are you going, where you can defend the e6 pawn as well.
Wesley goes knight c4. I mean, also very, very nice, because he just wants to make sure that, you know, there will be no way that I ever gonna have a problem, because I will always be in time to go knight d6, protecting my bishop. This is a very professional way, because I don't think that this is the best way, but if this is the safest way, then with few seconds on the clock, Aridas are also down to his seconds. e7 is on the board, but white is not settling anything, so black can even take b takes a4. Yeah, that's it. Wesley takes b takes a4, eliminating this pawn. Rook a8 can be met by simply knight d6. And
knight d6 on the board. Knight d6 also defends the f5 pawn. It doesn't matter, it's just a check on a5. f5 is defended. The king can go to d4 as well, and the h pawn and the f pawn, who's going to stop those from marching?
Yeah, well, basically, actually, I think Wesley does not even care about this. For him, important that he took care of the e7 pawn. If his queens are pawning or not, it's already a bonus. Yeah, important that he cannot lose. Now he goes h4, and probably he just wins the game.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Just amazing, Wesley. He just continues on his way. He's just unstoppable, I have to say. Peter, of course, undeniably, Alireza put on a brilliant fight, taking on positions where he could create his chances. But Wesley, in just every single kind of different natured position, it just felt like he was just unstoppable, just too strong, whether it came to finding precise defensive or tactics like bishop d3.
Yeah, exactly. And it looked like, you know, it was Alireza who was coming up with all these incredible ideas, checked and super dangerous stuff. And he knew what he's doing. Wesley was, you know, over the board in a rapid game, and it looked like, you know, it was so easy to lose your head and go down, collapse. But he just find all these incredible defenses. I mean, amazing stuff. We have been seeing Wesley so often under some immense danger, yeah, but how he's keeping his cool, how he's calculating brilliantly. Yes, if you are checking with the computer, you might be seeing that there is some move that could punish maybe Wesley's move, but those are not human moves. By the way, we also get the update that Jan Nepomniachtchi managed to save that game, and thanks to this, then he wins the match. So yeah, that's actually quite bitter for Hikaru, that he did create chances with the black pieces in the third game to bounce back, but finally was not enough, and Jan managed to seal the match.
So that means Wesley So and Jan Nepomniachtchi advance to the semi-finals, and Levon Aronian still keeping the match alive, still keeping hopes alive here. He needs to win this game to start with, and then the next one to take it into playoffs.
Exactly, but I mean, okay, it's still very, very far from over, because now after king g4, yeah, black gets this chance of king d6, and he's getting close to the pawns. I mean, black wants to take on h2, black wants to take on d5. Yeah, white goes knight c6, but now black will do what exactly? I mean, king d5 runs into knight e7 check, so black cannot take this pawn. But you can take on h2, and after king takes h3, maybe give the check rook h8, and after that you can already take on d5, and then it's a whole different story. Yeah, bishop h2 on the board. Is Magnus escaping with Levon down to 20 seconds? Amazing. I mean, because yeah, this king takes h3, rook h8 check, followed by king takes d5.
And Magnus on full alert here. The king has to move, the bishop is defended, and the point of this check is that you step aside from the knight e7 fork. Once you pick up the d5 pawn, white has to go he can't even go f5. The knight on c6 hangs. How are you defending? Very clever move. King d4 is met by bishop f6, picking up the rook.
Yeah, but now also there are some very funny endgames like, okay, there is maybe no need to go for it, but even king takes d4 is kind of very tricky if it's lost or not, because, for example, just to show, I don't think that Magnus will go for it, but I mean, takes, the a pawn is wrong, and if I will get a chance to sacrifice my bishop, of course you push knight f5. I'm not, yeah, Magnus.
Peter, too much has happened. Let's keep up with the live board. He decides to go for bishop f4, instantly playing this move, just being super alert and finding the precise defense. Now, if you go bishop f6, exactly your idea. King d5 would give up the rook, but pick up the pawn. Now the king marches to a8. There's nothing that's going to stop him. I don't think bishop e5, a6 is coming on time. And that would be the end of the road for Levon Aronian. The pawn queening on the wrong square is just an elementary draw.
Yeah, I mean, what an escape by Magnus, and Levon will go crazy because he did play a brilliant game. He created his chances, and just when it looked like, you know, he gonna win, but Magnus created some incredible tricks. I mean, when he got this pawn to h3, rook g8, and then he was coming with bishop g1, when you are down to your seconds, it's very easy to lose control of what's happening. And then also spotting immediately this bishop takes f4 move order of getting to the, yeah, a5, a6, or king c6, okay, doesn't matter. Important that nothing stops black's king of reaching a8.
As Magnus's colleagues say, Peter, that getting a winning position against the world champion is just half the job done. And in this one, he just shows the precise defensive technique that he has. And now it's all just over. You give up the pawn with the a8 square being the light colored square, and Levon having the dark squared bishop. There's nothing that can be done. It is game over. Magnus shaking his head. He knows he survived a scare, and with that, relieved to qualify to the semifinals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was a very big scare, and I'm also very happy for Levon and for Levon fans, because in this game we got a chance to see.
We do have the world champion joining us in Oslo, so let's hear what he has to say, and we'll be right back.
Partially because yeah, first two games was too simple, too easy actually, and then the game 3 wasn't going a little bit wrong. So at some point I felt like I gave him some slight chances to come back, but I'm not sure if it was like something really serious. But once you get a position in which you have to play rook a2, this means you played in the wrong way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe nothing critical. Yeah. So this line which appeared in the game, I think it's objectively a draw, yeah, because his king is too exposed. But I mean, anyway, I wasn't too happy about that game.
All right. Well, what is it about for you now then to get ready for semifinals? What will you do to prepare?
I don't know. Just study his games, study our games, study my games, study openings, and hopefully sleep a little.
It sounds like a good idea. We wish you all the best in the semifinals, Jan. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have to say, they keep reacting like this, the players. If they're not too happy about a certain aspect in a game, they don't seem too happy, even though it's a great performance by Jan Nepomniachtchi.
Yeah, fantastic chess from him. And chess players, they're just perfectionists.
Yeah.
One small error, even in the grand scheme of things, even if that error doesn't matter, we do dwell on those moves, unfortunately. But yeah, Nepomniachtchi, he's going to give a great match to Carlsen.
All right. And we did see that game with Magnus Carlsen. Wow, what a crazy game. Levon Aronian, it looked like he was winning.
Yeah.
It was eventually a draw. We are right now joined by Magnus Carlsen, ready for semifinals. Congratulations, Magnus.
Thank you.
Now, could I ask you, together with David and the analysis board, to take us through this final game? It was crazy to us.
Yeah, I guess I was outplayed at some point, and I certainly was lost, but somehow I managed to get out of it. Yeah, I'd seen that knight c4 one on the spot, but what could I do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, by now I guess the pawns are just running through. Magnus, was this game, do you think it was just down to the opening? I mean, already around here we thought it was very difficult for Black to even find a move. I mean, was the opening kind of affected by the match situation?
Yeah, sure. He sort of surprised me there, and I couldn't really find a good response at all.
He surprised you at what point? Sorry.
No, already early on by playing Rook D1, he sort of confused me with the move order there. And I mean, I decided just to improvise, but I don't think it was very good what I did. Probably while I had the chance, I needed to take the bishop pair or take his other bishop by checking on e3, because what I got in the game was just very, very unpleasant. And then yeah, I mean, knight d4 was actually when I did that was actually just a blunder, since I'd just missed that he could go bishop c5 and take an extra pawn this way. I was just considering f5. Probably that is good as well.
Okay, so in this position, knight d4.
Yeah, yeah, it was a miscalculation. So that was yeah, it wasn't very good. Today in general, I felt like I played a lot worse than I did the other days. But yeah, fortunately, I got the job done.
Mm. So Magnus, right now, is sort of the overwhelming feeling that you're a little bit disappointed with this game, or is it that you actually, I mean, basically you won 2, you could have won 3 games yesterday, another win today, and fantastic preliminaries?
No, sure. I just need to sort of pull myself together tomorrow, because I need to play a bit better than I did today. But obviously, like the worst moment for me today was that I could have lost the game, which meant that I would have had to draw on demand with white in the last game. So in that sense, it wasn't bad at all. But certainly not quite as good as the other days.
Mm. I know your father has said this, Magnus. Is it maybe on people on my sort of chess level and definitely below your level, is it a common misunderstanding that it's easy to draw on demand? Is it harder to draw on demand than what we think?
Yeah, I think as white, it shouldn't be very, very difficult, although I have lost some games there as well. But yeah, I think these must-win games are very, very tense for both sides, and frankly, I don't particularly enjoy being on either side of them.
Well, it is Jan Nepomniachtchi now for you in the semifinals. I mean, I'm very excited about that. How do you feel about it?
No, it's gonna be a good matchup. I think he started out really poorly in the preliminaries and then caught fire towards the end. And I thought today he was very impressive. So that's certainly going to be a great matchup.
Yeah, Magnus, you've known Jan, I mean, since you were kids, I guess, and you've played each other countless times. Are you allowed to give us any insight into how you'll be approaching those games?
Mm-hmm.
I think the most important thing is not to give him well, first of all, to pose him some problems in the openings, I guess, and then not to let him have sort of easy play where you can just play quickly with little tactical tricks all the time, something that he does extremely well.
Well, finally, Magnus, in the Champions Chess Tour, have you ever felt better about your play heading into the semifinals?
Again, I would say today wasn't great. If you'd asked me yesterday, no. But no, overall, this was, even with today, this was obviously a massive step up from the last few tournaments.
All right. We wish you the best of luck tomorrow, Magnus. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And the drama is not over today because it's still not decided between these two, Anish Giri and Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. Anish Giri is up by 1 point.
Magnus Carlsen saying that he needs to do something better tomorrow. Well, he's never, ever satisfied with the performance he has. He's always his biggest critic. We've seen that happen so far, topping the preliminaries, cruising through the quarterfinals, and yet he wants to do something different tomorrow. Peter, Magnus Carlsen, his own biggest critic?
Yeah, and I think this is also correct. I mean, he knows that he has to play his absolutely best because Jan Nepomniachtchi has shown in this tournament now, ever since he means business and he's very serious, that he's very, very dangerous opponent. So in this regard, wow, and Anish plays, this is what I wanted to mention, that Jordan Van Forest and Anish Giri, they are working together. And look at this. Here the move c4 was played by Jordan against Jan Nepomniachtchi, but Anish Giri says, no, thank you very much for the invitation. I just gonna play knight c3. I stick to my usual setup. But this is kind of, I would not call a surprise because, okay, Maxim had to change something. He has to win on demand with the black pieces. So any means are acceptable for him. I mean, he just wants to play a crazy game. And how do you do that against Anish if you go into some big opening duel? On the other hand, okay, this is also very much Anish's territory. He likes this. Oops, this is not my intention. I mean, he likes this. What is this? I mean, one more try. Yeah. Okay, I want to highlight these pieces. That this is a very flexible setup, and one of the nice things in this position is that, for example, if black plays the move bishop b7, if white wants to be super safe, then white can play now the move knight e2 before black develops the knight to f6. This is very, very important because now after knight f6, you get a chance to play knight g3, and then you put your pawn to c3, and you have all these kind of ideas like in the Ruy Lopez or from the Italian. You are familiar with the structure, and it's easy to play, right? This is one of those things that I think is very, very important to mention because it's a game where white wants to have safety. He's not trying to punish black's setup, and then getting a very nice stable position which you know how to treat would suit white actually very, very nicely.
Very interesting choice by Maxim, just trying to get a game and play on with the black pieces. We do have our 3 semi-finalists. Wesley So, Magnus Carlsen, Jan Nepomniachtchi have advanced. It now comes down to this final game remaining. Anish Giri needs just a draw to make it into the semis. Maxim has to win on demand. Magnus Carlsen will face Jan Nepomniachtchi in the finals, in the semifinals, while Wesley So will play the winner of Anish Giri Maxim match. And Shot Castle here. Peter, can you also just break down as this is the only game that we have remaining, so I think it's the best time to get all the ideas from you. In general, what are Black's plans? What are the setups that he can take for the piece development? How does he want to take out, the bishop goes to b7. Does he want to take out the knight to f6? Does he want to take out the knight to e7 after moving the e-pawn? Is c5 the break he wants to go for immediately? Right now, he's gone b4 and knight b1 retreat so that white can actually go knight d2. At some point, get that knight to c4 after defending the e4 pawn. Meanwhile, Black will go short castle.
Yes, I mean, white has a very simply play, like he wants to go h3, c3, I don't know exactly in which order, just to make sure that he has a very stable center, and then we'll act accordingly whether he plays queen e2 or not. And it was a very nice way that white had a chance of immediately going for this a4, b4, knight b1. So Anish didn't waste any time to do so. This is a super safe position, but you know, actually it reminds me suddenly of a anti-Sicilian, anti-Najdorf with bishop b5 check knight d7. We are often seeing those type of structures happen from there, and it's one of the specialties of both players. So in this regard, it's kind of a home ground. It started out from a modern defense, modern period defense, but actually it transposed to one of those typical Sicilian anti-Sicilian positions against the Najdorf.
I really like this move a5 in such structures. It just fixes the pawn on a6. In some position might end up isolating the b4 pawn. But more importantly, once the queen comes to e2, we see the bishop on b7 and the rook on a8 will be forever tied down to defending the a6 pawn. And that's always very unpleasant to deal with. I think I like Anish's approach here of making sure that black isn't able to free up by getting his own a5 in. He trades on d4, and this was my point, Peter, that I think taking on c3, black doesn't want that because that would open the b file for white, and white would be the first one to capture it. After trading on d4, it's not just the a6 weakness, but also the b4 pawn that gets isolated.
Yeah, but I think now we are seeing one of these problems in modern chess, that against these super guys, I mean, when you are trying to create some mess on the board, yeah, with the modern defense, where did it lead? Nowhere. I mean, finally, actually, Anish managed to have everything so much under control, and I don't see any dynamics for black. We all see white's chances of, you know, just playing for advantage gratis. I mean, just knight takes e5, d takes e5, then put the queen on e2. And I'm even not sure if black can survive the position objectively, but he's even needing to win this. Even knight takes e5, d5, queen b3 also very, very tempting. I mean, black is on the verge of collapse with this bishop on g7. This is a terrible bishop because all the action is in the center. White's pieces are so much more harmonious, so much more ready for this exact structure. This b4 pawn is a very vulnerable pawn. I mean, Maxim needs to win this, and he's in a lot of trouble.
100%. We've got the structure on the board. Anish goes for the trade, killing that dark squared bishop, which is actually one of black's biggest trumps in these kind of offbeat openings, trying to open up that diagonal. But now with that bishop dead, the d3 bishop is attacked. White can simply either step to e2 or to b3. Both these moves are really good because they do attack black's weak pawns, a6 and b4. And what you were saying, that white's the one who's playing without any fear. You take a look at white's position, just no weaknesses at all. And actually, after rook a4, how is black probably has to make a move like rook d8? Not really sure how he's defending the b4 pawn anyway.
Yeah, exactly, because even this tactical sequence like rook a4, rook f d8, rook takes b4, rook takes d3, rook takes b7 seems to be leading to a wonderful endgame for white. Rook e7, rook b2, and then knight c4. I would say that it's like a clear advantage for white. But I mean, given the match situation, it's basically game over because, okay, black can never ever think of winning this, which means that after rook a4, actually, black will have to gamble, and he just cannot go for this position, and then he will be pawned down for just nothing. Yeah, rook a4 on the board. I mean, he has to go rook d8, and then he has to take rook d3, but this is, okay, he goes rook fb8. Yeah, you see, he's ready to give up the pawn for nothing in order not to end up in an endgame. But okay, this is now really like pulling one more card on 20 or 19. I don't know. This is terrible for black.
Is bishop f8 the point here? He goes for it, attacking the rook. Now, if the rook was to move anywhere but the b file, black can go bishop takes e4. So rook b6, and I'm wondering if knight d7 just
then the bishop is hanging.
The bishop is hanging. You don't even have knight d7.
Yeah, it might just be over. I mean, bishop f8, rook b6, and you can basically resign.
And Maxim's shaking his head. Maxim completely in shock with the way the opening has turned out. It reminds me of something that Anish actually mentioned in one of his interviews. He goes knight g4, but there's just nothing happening. Even if black gets his queen to h4, white simply makes a move like knight f3, defending the mate on h2, and there's no attack to be created on the king side. Meanwhile, take a look at what's going on the queen side. Rook 8, the rook on b8 pinned, the rook on a8 dead, the bishop on b7 pinned, f7 attack.
And Maxim resigned. Sorry to interfere, but he resigned. He has seen enough. That's it. It's finished.
That is it.
That's it.
That was unbelievable. Just like that, Anish Giri wraps it up, and with that is the fourth semi-finalist and the end of the road for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. I have to say, Peter, this felt like things just went wrong and was not really a fight at the very end.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, but this is exactly the problem when we are talking about that with the black pieces. It's so difficult to create any chances, because when actually white is trying to create something, yeah, you play from the black side, you're opening, and white wants to try to put pressure on you, then you will get your counter chance. But if, like Maxim, for the almost very first time in his life playing the modern defense, he only plays it because he knows that, okay, he has nothing to lose. He has to try to create something. But Anish actually has so much experience in these positions, and the way he handled it, and reaching this, I mean, this a4, b4, knight b1, using the fact that, yeah, black's knight is not yet on f6. So, because if the knight would be on f6, he would be hitting the pawn on e4. However, like this, that white got this very harmonious setup, the move c3 coming up, just where do you create this counterplay? Of course, there was no reason to collapse as quickly as Maxime. But simply, I think it was also like a frustration that I tried the modern defense and I'm not getting any chances. I'm slightly worse. I believe that the move c takes d4 was already kind of moving the wrong direction. I mean, the cd e5 after d takes e5, knowing that black actually has to try to win the game, it was over for me right away.
Just an incredible last game from Anish. Incredible, well, not in terms of chess, but just how quickly it wrapped up. I am very surprised with this. Of course, as we're talking about it, just the opening choice, everything seemed to go wrong for the French Grandmaster. And I was about to mention while we were looking at this, that Anish did mention in one of his interviews that the way Maxime has been playing, especially the preliminaries, blitzing it out, often getting into a little bit of a trouble out of the opening, it gave him a sense that, you know, in some ways, Maxime is just so serious about the candidates. For him, it's just about, he doesn't really care about the result of this tournament. Despite that, he did make it to the quarterfinals, which goes on to show just the brutal force that Maxime Vachier-Lagrave is, that despite having that sort of the sort of games where we saw him just blitzing out moves, coming into trouble, he still made it into the top 8. But this one was an uninspired fight in round 4. I don't know what the preparation was here. After round 3, knowing he's in a must-win situation, I'm sure that he did think about what opening he wants to go for, but whatever that was, it did backfire. Anish was up to the task, which means that we've got our 4 semi-finalists. It is going to be Wesley So taking on Anish Giri and Magnus Carlsen versus Jan Nepomniachtchi. Peter, we've set ourselves up for a very, very fighting semi-final, not like it's been any other narrative throughout the tournament. But take a look at this. We are very much on course for perhaps an encore of either something, whichever final we get, it's going to be amazing. But we could potentially be seeing an encore of Magnus Wesley or even a Magnus Anish. But of course, before that, Magnus has the big task of overcoming the giant, Jan Nepomniachtchi. He completely destroyed Hikaru. Meanwhile, we do have Anish with us. Let's see what he has to say.
Resume it, basically, or continue the tournament. But now the situation is the following, that no matter how I play, I'm stuck for 4 more days, right? Because of the... So I think now I changed the plan and I'm going to try and win this tournament.
All right. And how are you going to do that against Wesley So in the semifinals?
It's a secondary thing. The most important announcement is that I've made up my mind. I'm going to try and win this tournament.
Ah, sorry.
That's all I have so far. Now, when it comes to making this plan come true, well, yeah, that's another thing, but I haven't thought about it yet.
All right. Well, Anish, I did ask you a few days ago if you ever sort of felt that you're playing better chess than you have been in 2021. I'm not going to ask you that again today. I mean, your chess playing is fantastic. So what about your chess playing are you the most happy about right now?
Well, I mean, there are, of course, as with everyone, there are also definitely things going wrong. Well, not today probably, but yesterday, for example, there have been some terrible moves that I made. Chess is a very complicated game. There is never perfection, and the more we learn about the chess, about the game, about the different computers, chess engines, the more we realize how imperfect even the best players are. You know, the Magnus Carlsen himself is like 1,000 points, 1,000 ELO points away from the strongest computer. So even if you play tremendous chess, even if you are in great form, still you are so far from perfection. There is so much to strive for. So I wouldn't exaggerate my, my quality of the games. But of course, I am happy with the results so far. I think it's my this season. It's my furthest best results so far, right? I think I've only been to the final in the previous season. In this season, I haven't made it to the semis yet. So that's something I'm happy about and looking forward. Wesley is a great opponent. I'm looking forward.
Yeah, and Wesley, he has been the conqueror of Magnus Carlsen in previous tour events. Is that going to be, I mean, as well as your goal of winning the tournament, is that going to be one of the inspirations to show Magnus how it's done?
Well, I'm not Magnus Carlsen. I'm not even close. So in that sense, that Wesley is Magnus Slayer, it's not my problem. I mean, I've had lots of games with Wesley. I know him for a very long time. I mean, I've spoken to him the first time I played him. We were both kids, and it was the question, you know, who was sort of the more, who was the bigger prodigy at the time. I mean, we were like, I don't know, 13, 14 or something. He was a year older and a step ahead. And then I've met him later. I've spoken to him back when he was still in Philippines, and you know, he was telling me how he lives alone. And later, the story about him has been told many times, you know, and it's a sort of a sad part in his life. But at the time, the way he said it to me didn't sound so bad. He was saying, you know, I'm living alone. I can watch movies whenever I want. And I was a teenager listening to that, thinking, yeah, sure, sounds good. But yeah, obviously, eventually he moved to States and like all that happened. But I know him for a very long time. I've played with him since the beginning of times. There is a very fun clip of mine also when I was, I don't know, 13 or something. Very embarrassing. You can find it. You'll probably enjoy it. A good clip to show how I beat him in the Vaikanze tournament, the B group, I think. It's very embarrassing, very embarrassing. I was still a child at the time. But yeah, I know him for a long time, so it's not like, you know, I mean, he's great, but, you know, the history is too long that it's not relevant. We just start from scratch tomorrow.
Yeah. Anish, earlier you mentioned that you were quitting your Twitter creativity for the semi-finals, and now that you've announced that you are you have a goal to win the tournament.
It's one of these.
Are you going to make my life more difficult and stop Twitter?
No, but you know, these things like. You hope you say things like, you know, sometimes you tell, you maybe, you know, your wife is saying like, you know, I want this diamond ring. And you say, well, you know, if this and that happens, I'll give you the diamond ring. And you hope that never happens, right? This is also one of these things like, I was thinking like, again, I have to tweet something, you know, and all the same hashtags and the same, this picture. And I was thinking like, you know, let me sort of use an excuse and say that I'm saving my creativity for the semifinals, hoping I'm not going to get there, and I don't need to, you know. Now I have to think about it again. I mean, it's harder, you know, by these days to come up with a new tweet rather than come up with the opening you're going to play. Not to mention, I have to still post a picture with the Airthings device here. See, it's nicely red now. I'm going to shine red because the CO2 is too much. So maybe you can screenshot this and it will count as a picture, or do I still have to post one?
Yeah, I think Airthings will be very happy with this.
Yes. No, it's great. I mean, it's fantastic. I have tier 3 devices. One, during one of the preliminary days, suddenly it shot, you know, I had this panic shot. Usually I have panic during games because of the blunders, but this time this thing went red. I look and there is like 1200, I don't know even the unit of CO2.
Yeah.
And 1200, you know, it's for me, it's like really a lot. It's already like, so I start to have like a panic attack because I feel like I'm dying with that too much CO2, you know. I can barely breathe. Fortunately, I have here my balcony, so I open it while a game is going on and I push the door open and slowly, you know, but I mean, you know, just too much. All these devices measuring everything. I have, I already have like ever since we have this air things thing, I already have air purifier, air humidifier. I don't want to see my electricity bill. I mean, all my sockets are plugged. I mean, there are all kinds of plugs. Everything is plugged in. Working on everything. Still, the CO2 is too high. I mean, just.
Air quality, not knowing what to tweet. I mean, that's the definition of first world problems.
All right, Anish. We hope the air quality and that you're feeling fresh tomorrow for the semifinals. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah,
Anish Giri. I love having him here in a good mood.
Yeah, yes. So great to see him like that. And I mean, as we mentioned, playing some of the best chess.
I'm very happy, Anish, there, Peter, and mentioning his air quality and all the devices with air things that he has. Definitely a big moment for him coming up in the semifinals as he will face Wesley So. But right now, the big question on his mind is, what should he tweet next? Very entertaining. I think we're all going to watch out for that one. But for now, let's take a look at how the quarterfinals ended with Magnus Carlsen, Jan Nepomniachtchi, Wesley So and Anish Giri are our semifinalists, and the action starts tomorrow. We've got 4 players left. They will play 2 sets, 4 rapid games every day, and if it's a tie at the end, then we will see a playoff. Peter, what is your summary of this incredible quarterfinals that we saw with so many decisive games?
Yeah, really intense fight. Okay, this very last game was somehow very, very unfortunate for Maxim because he was trying to gamble with this modern defense, but it backfired heavily. I mean, Anish got his dream set up. I mean, it felt to me like Anish was really ready for it. Maybe because knowing that Jan Nepomniachtchi was actually playing many times the Pirc and modern defense against Anish, probably he has really spent a lot of time making sure that whenever it will happen, he is perfectly ready. And it was exactly Maxim who ended up on the receiving end because he never really got any dynamics and finally was just crushed completely. Now, I think also it was connected that he had to win on demand. And when Maxim saw that he got a position where he doesn't have any chances, then he actually psychologically collapsed. Yeah, he simply understood that that's it. And that actually made the game finish so quickly because he just understood that there is no way he's gonna have any chance, and just collapsed completely. But well played by Anish. I mean, first of all, getting the advantage, getting the edge. He won that Rouser game against Maxim. So basically, Anish won 2 of his white games and didn't really encounter much problem from the black side. Quite a convincing performance from Anish, and I'm looking forward to this Wesley So Anish Giri game match because both players seem to be very well in shape, and it's a big question: who will stop Wesley? Yeah, this had been the question already since he has won 2 of the Champion Chess Tour events. So maybe it will be Anish, but this is a very, very big matchup.
And that also means actually, Peter, that the players who ended at the top of the table after our qualifiers, Magnus Carlsen, Anish Giri, Wesley So finishing 3rd, Jan Nepomniachtchi finishing 5th, they've all made it into the semifinals. Just shows the consistency of the performance that they brought into the event. And we set ourselves up for 2 very, very exciting matchups. And a big shout out to all our viewers who join us. Of course, everything that we do here, you make it fun by connecting with us on our social media channels, on Twitch, on YouTube, on Twitter, just all of it. So thank you for joining us. And if you would like to support what Chess24 and what the Play Magnus group does and the tour, do consider going premium. There's a 40% off. You not only support the tour, you also invest in your own chess. There is an immense library on Chess24 to improve your opening, middle game, end game courses, lots of action there. So do check that out. Besides that, throughout the tour, we're going to be having some incredible events with our tour participants. There's going to be Hand and Brain, there's going to be Banter Blitz, all sorts of fun stuff, and premium members get a chance to challenge the best players in the world. So do consider going premium and supporting us. We will be back with an epic semi-final. Set 1 tomorrow. It's good night from us. We look forward to seeing you.
Air quality isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think about chess and esports, but it affects our focus, decision-making, health, sleep, and more. What's in the air you breathe? Find out with Air Things. Breathe better, live better.
Freedom!
So fresh, so new.
Freedom!
It's all for you.
All for you. Freedom!
Keep your ear to the ground.
Talking about the freedom.
It's the best show in town.
Best show in